Chapter 35-39. This made Tang Yin a little embarrassed. She coughed twice and said, "Lin Yi, is this inside the space of the jade pendant?" "That's right. Didn't you notice that the heaven and earth spiritual energy here is especially rich?" Lin Yi nodded and said, It's really like that." Tang Yun was curious when she came in and didn't notice the heaven and earth spiritual energy. Now that she heard what Lin Yi said, she suddenly realized that the heaven and earth spiritual energy here was actually several times more than in the outside world. It was much more than in the Snow Valley. Thinking of this, Tang Yun quickly sat cross-legged on the ground and began to circulate the ruthless tactics. Time passed quickly, and it was 8 o'clock the next morning. The inheritor and Tian Chan were called to the empty space behind the inn alone. Perhaps Ancestor Xianchen had already noticed that there seemed to be something wrong with Tian Chan, so he didn't let her participate in the Heaven Rank Conference. In this way, Lin Yi's position in the Heaven Rank Conference was even more disadvantageous, and it was more convenient for Ancestor Xianchen to manipulate his plan. In the conference room, all the participants, including Rock, Candy, Sydney, and Elder Anya, who were related to the inheritor, were also arranged to the empty space downstairs of the inn. When Lin Yi entered the conference room, the atmosphere inside made him feel indescribably depressed. Everyone looked at him strangely. Previously, Kong Ming had already secretly connected all the people, so these people naturally looked at Lin Yi with some pity. In their opinion, Lin Yi would definitely become the sacrifice of the Heaven Islands plan. What surprised Lin Yi was that he actually saw Tag On Long. This guy should be a very important part of Ancestor Xuanchen's plan. Otherwise, Ancestor Xianchen wouldn't have taken the risk to find trouble with him and force Sun Jingyi to save him. All right, since everyone is here, the Heaven Rank Conference is about to officially begin. Ancestor Xianchen walked into the conference room after Lin Yi. Behind him was Kong Ming, but what was surprising was that he and Kong Ming sat on both sides of the conference room's main seat. He was not sitting in the middle. Could it be that there were more distinguished guests coming? This made all the trial challengers whisper at the same time. They wanted to know what had happened. Who was more powerful than the Five Elements sect? How was this possible? Silence. Kong Ming's expression turned solemn as he said, "Let us give a warm round of applause to Chancellor Nan Tian, the welcoming envoy from Heavenly Island." The so-called libation was a position similar to that of a mentor on Heaven Island. This position could be big or small. However, when Kong Ming saw how arrogant he was, he knew that this person was probably a powerful person. Moreover, he didn't look old, only in his 40s. Looking at his appearance, he seemed to be around 30 years old. This kind of person was probably in existence with boundless prospects on Heaven Stage Island. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been sent to the secular world to carry out a mission, just when everyone was stunned and didn't expect that someone from Heaven Stage Island would actually come. A black shadow appeared in the main seat of the conference room, with a whoosh. It could be said that he came and went without a trace. There was no sign at all. No one knew where this guy came from. Primordial spirit? Lin Yi looked at the person and was a little surprised. This person was not a physical entity, but something similar to a primordial spirit. An ordinary cultivator might not notice this, but Lin Yi dealt with 2 primordial spirits every day, so naturally, he could see this person's attribute at a glance. Chancellor Nan Tian had just sat down when he heard someone say that he was a primordial spirit. He immediately snorted coldly. "Who is this little bastard? How dare you criticize me in front of this chancellor? Xianchen, is this the quality of the cultivators in the secular world?" Chancellor Nan Tian, "Please calm down." Kong Ming sneered in his heart. This Lin Yi was really something. He had just arrived, and he had already offended Chancellor Nan Tian? However, little did he know, Chancellor Nan Tian had already received a hint from Patriarch Xianchen. Even without this incident, Chancellor Nan Tian would still target Lin Yi. This person is an unorthodox rogue cultivator. His name is Lin Yi, and he is a pretentious person. Just ignore him. Someone like him will only be courting death if he goes to Heavenly Island. That's right. Kong Mingming is right. Don't think that you are all-powerful in the secular world. Once you reach Heavenly Island, you are nothing. Once you reach Heavenly Island, you are the newcomers of the lowest level, just like the other newcomers who come to Heavenly Island. If anyone thinks that they are great, then I don't even need to do anything. They will die miserably. Chancellor Nantian nodded and said, "That Lin Yi, do you think that you can be arrogant just because I have a primordial spirit here? All right, I will remember you. Although my primordial spirit avatar is nothing, don't let my main body meet you when you go to Heavenly Island. Otherwise, you will die miserably." Lin Yi didn't expect that his casual words would attract such hatred from Chancellor Nantian. Wasn't this a bit unrealistic? Could it be that Chancellor Nantian, Patriarch Xianchen, and Kong Mingming had reached some secret agreement? Thinking about it, it should be so. Otherwise, why would this guy target me for no reason? Lin Yi secretly remembered Chancellor Nantian's appearance. When he arrived at Heavenly Island in the future, he would hide from him first, and then find a chance to get rid of him. Haha, Chancellor Nantian, don't lower yourself to his level. Next, tell me about the things we need to pay attention to when we go to Heavenly Island. Kong Mingming laughed and said in his heart, in his opinion, Lin Yi's death was already in the countdown. Even if Lin Yi endured it later, he would definitely die when he arrived at Heavenly Island. Well, the first thing is that I want to tell everyone about the Heavenly Tao. That is, what is the Heavenly Tao? Chancellor Nantian's words made everyone hold their breath, including Lin Yi. This was because everyone had heard that the Heavenly Tao was above Heavenly Island. But what exactly was the Heavenly Tao? No one knew. Was the Heavenly Tao a level or just a general term? No one knew. So, when Chancellor Nantian wanted to explain, everyone quickly prepared to listen. Chapter 3540. Chancellor Nantian's words shocked all the cultivators present. So, the Heavenly Tao was immortal cultivation. This was a legendary existence. So, it could really be realized. And a cultivator was equivalent to a Qi refinement stage cultivator. Thinking about it, it made sense. After all, cultivators cultivated true Qi. Wasn't this the Qi refinement stage? However, what they couldn't accept was that their strength, which they were so proud of, would be nothing if they went to Heavenly Island? Would there be a lot of experts then? Or experts like Chancellor Nantian were only a minority? They didn't dare to ask these questions. After all, with Lin Yi as an example, no one dared to speak carelessly. Next, according to the rules of the previous years, I will distribute the cultivation mantra to everyone. Chancellor Nantian's words made everyone in the meeting room breathe rapidly. Cultivation's mantra and mnemonic formula? Did that mean that everyone could break through to become a Heavenly Tao expert through cultivating this mantra, which was the so-called foundation establishment stage expert? If that was the case, then could they not go to Heaven Island and cultivate in the secular world? And Lin Yi was a little excited. He didn't expect that there would really be a mantra to break through to Heavenly Tao. Looking at the excited crowd, Chancellor Nantian suddenly sneered and said, I haven't finished speaking. Don't be too happy too early. Everyone's joy lasted for less than a minute, and they heard Chancellor Nantian's cold words. Although this mantra can allow one to break through to the Heavenly Tao, it is incomplete and not the complete mantra, Chancellor Nantian said. As everyone knows, every cultivator can only cultivate one mantra. If you want to cultivate another, your strength will be crippled, and you will go mad. And when you step into the ranks of immortal cultivators, you only have one chance to choose a mantra. If you think that the mantra is not useful, then you can change to another one. You can also change to this mantra passed down from ancient times, but this mantra has a problem. It can only help you break through to foundation establishment stage. If you want to go further and reach my level, then it won't work. There was no doubt. This mental cultivation method mnemonic chant is just for show. If the person who cultivates it forcefully cultivates above the foundation establishment stage, they will go berserk and become an idiot. There is an example on our Heaven Stage Island. Previously, the dignified Heaven Stage Island Vice Island master the will of heaven because he cultivated this crippling mental cultivation method. Now, he had cultivated into an idiot. You can follow in his footsteps. Everyone trembled in fear when they heard this. Even the Vice Island master of the middle island of Heaven Stage Island had turned into a retard. Then this mental cultivation method was really useless. Those who originally had the thought of giving it a try had now dispelled their interest. Although everyone didn't know what the middle island of the Heaven Step Island was, the name of the Vice Island Master was frightening enough. In that case, Senior Nantion, our mantra has already reached the peak of the heaven rank. There is no further mantra. Then we have no choice but to change the mantra. Although our practitioners' arts are pretty good now, we can't continue anymore. Pinliang spoke up at this time. Not bad. That's a good question. Chancellor Nantion nodded and said, after you come to the Heaven Step Island, you can have a chance to obtain the continuation of the original mantra. Your mantra may be a secret to you, but on the Heaven Step Island, it's not a secret at all, except for some very unpopular ones, such as the Chrysanthemum Treasure Book that some of you have cultivated. The rest can be found, but divine arts like the Chrysanthemum Treasure Book should be able to continue to be cultivated. As long as you know the method to break through to the heavenly path, it's fine. I see. Thank you for enlightening me, Senior Nantion. Pinliang nodded. All right, Xianchen, distribute the breakthrough mantra. Chancellor Nantion said, this thing is just a formality. It's a rule for thousands of years, but I suggest you throw it away directly. Otherwise, that would be a mistake. Don't blame me for not reminding you. Yes, Xianchen Ancestor nodded and handed a stack of printed mantra to Kong Ming Ming beside him for him to distribute. Kong Ming Ming distributed the mantra in his hand one by one, and then returned to his original position. Most of the trial takers tore it up without even looking at it. They were also afraid that if they couldn't help but look at it, they wouldn't be able to control themselves from cultivating it. But there were also people who threw it away after looking at it. They couldn't help but be curious. However, basically everyone either tore it up, threw it away, or left it on the table without touching it. Only Lin picked up the mantra with interest and looked at it. Creation battle art. Lin glanced at the mantra. It was a very magnificent mantra. What surprised Lin was that the style of the mantra between the lines was actually somewhat similar to the fourth level of the art of dragon mastery, heaven snatching, but the content was completely different. So Lin couldn't help but study it carefully. Some people are so full of themselves. Do they think they're very powerful? I've already said that this mantra is trash, but some people can't help but look at it. Chancellor Nantion saw that Lin actually studied it carefully and was a little annoyed. Was he King ignoring his words? Senior Nantion, please calm down. This Lin is known as the #1 pretentious rogue cultivator. If he wants to look at it, let him. Kong Ming Ming couldn't wait for Lin to die from chi deviation. There's a good saying, if you don't court death, you won't die. He's courting death. What can we do about it? Everyone has their own choice. But since this mantra has been given to you, it's your choice whether to look at it or not. If you're willing to cultivate it, then I won't care so much. Chancellor Nantion nodded and said lightly, and I think it's not bad. Lin took out his phone and flipped to the fourth level of the art of dragon mastery, heaven snatching, and began to compare it. Because the fourth level stated that it could only be used when breaking through the heavenly Tao, Lin Yi didn't dare to fix it. The lesson of qi deviation last time was not enough. Lin Yi's memory was better. After reading The Art of Dragon Mastery, he continued to study the creation battle art. He also locked his phone and put it on the table. Chapter 3541. And so, while Lin Yi wasn't paying attention, Pin Liang grabbed Lin Yi's phone with a whoosh. Lin Yi was taken aback. He didn't think that someone would dare take his phone in this situation. However, he wanted to snatch it, but after thinking about it, he decided against it. He wanted to keep a low profile. If he caused trouble at the heavenly rank meeting, he would probably fall into Patriarch Xuanqin's trap. He might even be kicked out of the heavenly rank meeting. The phone was locked anyway, and Pin Liang wouldn't be able to get in. As expected, Pin Liang was a little disappointed when he saw the password. He glanced at Lin Yi's phone's background and couldn't help but feel envious of Lin Yi. It was a photo of Lin Yi, the inheritors, Bingtang, Sydney, Tian Chan, Xinyan, Han Jingjing, and the others. The location seemed to be in a small village. Who was this old man? Fuck. Pin Liang saw the old man standing with Lin Yi in the photo and shivered, almost throwing Lin Yi's phone away. Fuck, wasn't this the Killer Kong duo? Pin Liang's eyes widened as he confirmed it a few times. It was definitely one of the Killer Kong duo. Why was he taking a photo with Lin Yi? Pin Liang remembered something abruptly. These were the Killer Diamond duo, and he'd heard that their name was Lin Dongfang and Lin Yi. Holy shit, it couldn't be, right? Pin Liang felt the urge to cry. Was he playing with him? He was going against the descendant of the Killer Kong duo? This was practically courting death. He remembered that Lin Dongfang said he'd introduce him to a junior as a follower. Wasn't that junior Lin Yi? Pin Liang's fear of Lin Dongfang was ingrained in his bones. His mind went blank in that instant. He'd forgotten what he was doing. The scene of the mad dragon ancestor getting killed by Lin Dongfang in his last life. It was still fresh in his mind. Lin Yi looked at Pin Liang in the dark, but he looked like he was struck by lightning. He stared at his phone blankly, wondering if he'd seen Mingyao's photo. Are you filled with emotions? All right, everyone has finished reading this mantra, right? Then let's proceed to the next step. Chancellor Nan Tian said lightly, Yes, Senior, let's talk about the next parts. Kong Mingming nodded. The next segment is the opening of the Heavenly Island. The opening of the Heavenly Island was a very difficult task, so the inheritor and the founder needed to work together. All inheritors must have the spirit of giving and sacrificing themselves. They must do their best to help the person who opened the passageway to resist the pressure of true qi that came from the opening of the passageway to Heaven Stage Island. If the inheritor was lazy, then the person who opened it will face unprecedented danger, and all the previous efforts will be in vain. The Heavenly Step Island plan will fail, Chancellor Nan Tian said. Everyone was in an uproar. They didn't expect this plan to be so difficult. Lin Yi frowned. Although he had expected that the inheritor might be in danger when opening the Heavenly Island, he didn't expect that the inheritor would actually play the role of a bodyguard. Wouldn't that be life-threatening? So, in order to ensure the smooth implementation of the plan, in order to make the inheritor willingly sacrifice her life for the person who opened it, we must take a measure. At this point, Chancellor Nan Tian paused for a moment and said, That is, let the person who opened it have intercourse with the 7 inheritors at the same time. I will use a special method to set up a heart-linking lock array. One will prosper, one will perish, one will perish. If there's something wrong with the person who opened it, then all the inheritors will die. On the other hand, if there's something wrong with the inheritor, it won't affect the person who opened it. This is also the reason why the inheritor can maintain her virginity. Once the inheritor loses her virginity because of the person she loves, then this heart-linking lock array will be ineffective. They will only prosper with the person they love and will not have anything to do with the person who opened it. And the virgin intercourse is the key step of the heart-linking lock array. I don't agree. Lin Yi didn't expect that the inheritor would maintain her virginity for this reason. He was a little angry. Previously, he thought there was something to say, but he didn't expect it to be such a dirty reason. These inheritors were all people closest to him, so how could he possibly agree to this suggestion? Kong Ming and Patriarch Xianqian looked at each other and saw the sneer in each other's eyes. They knew that Lin Yi was going to jump out. Not only did he offend Chancellor Nan Tian, he also offended all the cultivators. Let's see if he can still die. Lin Yi, are you going to destroy the entire inheritance plan for your own selfish desires? Patriarch Xianqian said coldly. You mean that if you don't agree, then Heaven Stage Island won't open? And we don't have to go to Heaven Stage Island. Then Chancellor Nan Tian came for nothing? Patriarch Xianqian was very sinister. His words directly pushed Lin Yi to the opposite side of all the participating cultivators and Chancellor Nan Tian. Moreover, Lin Yi couldn't refute him. Sure enough, as soon as he said this, the cultivators all glared at Lin Yi, although everyone was afraid of Lin Yi and didn't dare to say anything. If someone were to make a rallying cry, these people would definitely gang up on him. That's right, Lin Yi. Don't be so stingy. I'm just using them. At most, I'll return them to you after Heaven Stage Island opens. Tagon Long looked at Lin Yi with a smirk. He had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Previously, he had always been angry at Lin Yi. Now he finally had the chance to counterattack. Sleeping with Lin Yi's women was a very satisfying thing, especially since Lin Yi had not lost his virginity to them. Wasn't that equivalent to him being the first? Second hand was already very satisfying, let alone first hand. Tagon Long kept imagining the wonderful scene of pushing down so many inheritors in his heart. He's the one who opened it. Lin Yi glanced at Tagon Long and asked faintly, why can he be the one who opened it? What's so special about him? So others can't open it? Don't say so much useless stuff. He naturally has something special about him to be able to open it. Kong Ming interrupted. Do you think anyone can open it? If that's the case, there's no need for Sun Jingyi to treat him back then. Him? What's special about him? Lin Yi asked. Tell me, maybe I can open it too. Chapter 3542. Oh, is that so? You're no longer needed here. Lin Yi glanced at Tagon Long indifferently, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Without warning, he suddenly attacked. Frenzied Fire 8 trigrams palm. 15th form. This was the second strongest move that Lin Yi could use now. After continuous breakthroughs, Lin Yi could already use the 15th and 16th forms of the Frenzied Fire 8 trigrams palm. However, the 15th form, with the bonus of the Essence Necklace's attack level, could instantly kill a peak late-stage Heaven Rank Perfection expert. Of course, the premise was that the expert was unprepared. Otherwise, even if it was the 16th form with the bonus, it would be difficult to say that it could instantly kill the opponent when the opponent was fully prepared. Boom! Tagon Long screamed as his entire body flew out, smashing a big hole in the wall of the inn. He flew directly out of the inn. You actually killed Tagon Long? Patriarch Xianqian suddenly stood up, looking at Lin Yi with some shock and disbelief. He never thought that Lin Yi would kill Tagon Long. One had to know that Tagon Long was the pioneer of Heaven Island. Without him, no one would be able to go to Heaven Island. Judging from Lin Yi's previous situation, Lin Yi seemed to be very cooperative with the people who planned to open Heaven Island. So why did he suddenly go berserk and kill someone? Didn't that mean that their cooperation was in vain? Kong Ming and Chancellor Nan Tian also looked at Lin Yi in disbelief. They never thought that Lin Yi could do such a thing. The power of the move that Lin Yi activated just now had already exceeded the strength of an ordinary peak late-stage Heaven Rank Perfection expert. Tag on Long did not even need to check to know that he was definitely dead. Even if he wanted to save him, it was impossible. Patriarch Xianqin was a little dumbfounded. All the trial takers present were at a loss as to what to do. That's it? We can't go to Heaven Island anymore? The pioneer is already dead? Go. Everyone go together. Kill Lin Yi. Get rid of this saboteur. Although Kong Ming was a little regretful that he couldn't go to Heaven Step Island, the problem now was that since he couldn't go, then he would maximize the benefits and let these people get rid of Lin Yi together. Of course, Kong Xiaoming yelled, and everyone was pissed off. Lin Yi knew that Tag and Dragon was the initiator and that he was so important, but he still killed him. He didn't respect the Sky-class Islands plan and the inheritors at all. However, Lin Yi's strength was still there. Who didn't know that the bird that pokes its head out would be shot? These cultivators were able to reach the level of Heaven's stage Great Circle, which one of them was a coward. Their current goal was to ascend to the heavenly Tao, not to fight to the death with others. And so, while Kong Ming's words struck a chord in everyone's hearts, no one dared to make the first move. All of them turned to Pinliang and Naipeo. After all, Pinliang and Jean Naipeo were from the everyday sect, and other than the Xianqin elder, they were the strongest people here. Only if they made a move would the others be able to gang up on them. Naipeo, of course, looked at Pinliang. If Pinliang didn't speak, he wouldn't speak either. At this time, Kong Ming also looked at Pinliang. Pinliang had promised at the entrance of the inn that if Lin Yi dared to stop the Heaven Step Island plan, Pinliang would definitely stand against Lin Yi. Ah? Why are you all looking at me? Pinliang was just in shock and immersed in endless, painful memories. He didn't know what was happening in front of him at all. Kong Ming was a little speechless. What were you doing just now, bro? Playing with your phone? Why are you still playing with your phone at a time like this? But he was still hoping that Pinliang would call for everyone to attack together, so he could only explain patiently. Lin Yi didn't want his woman to have a relationship with the founder of Heaven Step Island, Tag on Long, so he killed Tag on Long. Oh, good kill, Pinliang said immediately. What? Kong Ming's eyes widened. He looked at Pinliang in disbelief, thinking that he had heard wrong. Mad Dragon Master, what the hell are you doing? The Xianqin elder frowned and glared at Pinliang. That wasn't what he said before. They agreed to kill Lin Yi together. Why did he go back on his words? Screw your head, Pinliang raged. So what if I said it was good kill? If he's not dead, I'll help him. Mother asterisk cur, if he dares to touch boss Lin Yi's woman, I'll be the first to kill him. Right, Pow? Right? Naipeo paused, but he listened to Pinliang. He was a little confused, but whatever Pinliang said was right. If Pinliang suddenly called Lin Yi his boss, then Lin Yi would naturally be his boss as well. I'll use wasp absorption arts to suck him to death. Kong Ming looked at the two in front of him, dumbfounded. What the hell was going on? Do you think Boss Lin Yi did the right thing? Pinliang pointed at Lawless Fist, not far from him. Ugh. Yes. Lawless Fist nodded. What about you? You think it's good to kill him? Pinliang pointed at another foreigner. Good, very good. The foreigner quickly said, and what about you? Pretty girl? Pinliang looked at Song Ling Rui and asked. He felt that this girl looked familiar, as if he had seen her somewhere before. And I'll go help too. Song Ling Rui nodded. Xianqin, Kong Ming, there's no problem, right? Look, everyone agrees with Boss Lin Yi killing Tag and Dragon. Pinliang shrugged and said with a smile, the Xianqin ancestor was fuming. This was a sign of everyone rebelling. He turned to Chancellor Nantian. Chancellor Nantian, what do you think? Rebellion? This is rebellion. But I don't care if you don't want to go to Sky-class Island, then I'll go back. The practitioners of the common world are really lowly. What the hell? Chancellor Nantian shook his head. Lin Yi, what are you trying to do? Don't you know how important Tagan Dragon is? The Xiantian ancestor was furious. Although there was still a backup like Tian Chan. Tian Chan had 4 solid and 1 void attributes. Although she could barely be replaced, the most important thing was that she was a girl. This was also the flaw of the hidden child that the Xiantian ancestor was worried about. Tian Chan was not related to those inheritors, and those inheritors might not go all out. Even if Tian Chan had a good relationship with Lin Yi, she was not Lin Yi, and the inheritors might not risk their lives to protect her. Chapter 3543. I know, but it's not irreplaceable. Can't someone else do it? Lin Yi said faintly. Huh? You mean Tian Chan? Tian Chan is a woman and can't use the heart-linking lock formation. How can you guarantee that the inheritors will do their best to protect Tian Chan, since he couldn't do anything to Lin Yi? And these people, led by Zhong Pingliang, had inexplicably rebelled. He could only take a step back and calmly discuss with Lin Yi. Otherwise, no one would be able to go to Heaven Island. However, the Xiantian patriarch clearly had a better one. Why did he use the second best one? Previously, Taganlong was crippled, and he had no choice but to settle for the second best. But now, Taganlong was fine, but he was killed by Lin Yi. Tian Chan isn't the only 5-element cultivator. In fact, I'm one too. Lin Yi said faintly and began to chant. He compressed a ball of true qi in his hand, but didn't release it. Instead, he switched between the 7 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, mist, and ice. What? The Xiantian patriarch couldn't help but widen his eyes. He didn't expect that Lin Yi was also a 5-element cultivator. Not only that, but he had 7 elements. He was even more powerful than Taganlong's 5-element and 5-element cultivators. When the other inheritors saw that Lin Yi was also a 5-element cultivator, they gave up and didn't dare to go against Lin Yi anymore. Anyway, Lin Yi could be the initiator to open Heaven Island. They didn't care about Taganlong's life or death. In their eyes, it was all the same as long as they could reach Heaven Island. Okay. The Xiantian patriarch was a little helpless. Although he didn't want to let it go just like that, he thought about it. Taganlong only played this role, and Lin Yi was the initiator. Those inheritors were all his girlfriends. How could they protect him wholeheartedly? In this way, the chances of opening Heaven Island were greater. It was almost 100%. This was because if the inheritor gave his all and sacrificed himself for the sake of others, the heavenly island wouldn't have failed. Those who failed were those who did not use their full strength. No wonder he's so arrogant. It turns out that he has some capital. Chancellor Nan Tian looked at Lin Yi and mocked faintly, but on Sky-class Island, all that elemental stuff is useless. Right now, you can only be regarded as laying the foundation for the Qi refining stage. The real highlight is the foundation building stage. Only those who succeeded in building their foundation could be called elites in the Tao of Heaven and step on the path of immortal cultivation. Although you're all cultivators now, you're still mortals. Lin Yi smiled and didn't say anything. Foundation establishment. Lin Yi, are you willing to be the one to activate it? Asked Patriarch Black Earth. Sure. Lin Yi nodded. All right, if that's the case, then it's settled. Chancellor Nan Tian, please continue the topic of the meeting. Patriarch Xiantian said, all right, when the heavenly island was opened, I'll guide you personally. When I say charge, everyone will charge towards the entrance. If you're too slow, don't blame me if you can't get through. Chancellor Nan Tian paused for a moment before continuing. There's one last important thing. That is, when you go to the Heaven Stage Island, it's best to let your friends and family send you off. If you want to come back after going to the Heaven Stage Island, could it be that I can't return to the secular world after going there? Lin Yi was slightly shocked and asked, you can definitely come back this time. How can you not come back? Only a retarded itinerant cultivator like you would ask such a retarded question. Chancellor Nantian mocked and said, however, with my strength, I can only make my primordial spirit clone come back under the effect of a secret technique. If I want my main body to come back, my strength isn't enough. Everyone came to a realization. It wasn't that they couldn't come back, but that those who were almighty couldn't come back. And those who could come back probably didn't have any friends or family left in the secular world. There was no reason for them to come back. Then, Master Zhang Liju, can he come back? Lin Yi asked after some thought. Of course. What kind of power is Master Zhang Liju? Of course he can come back. Ignorant. Chancellor Nantian humphed. Lin Yi nodded and breathed a sigh of relief. The cauldron in the tomb was most likely taken away by Zhang Liju when he remembered it. All right, I've said what I need to say. Everyone prepare yourself, tell your friends and family to send you off. Tomorrow night, the Heaven Stage Island will officially open. Yes. Everyone was shivering after hearing this, but they were also filled with excitement. After all, the path to the heavenly Tao was right in front of them. The crowd dispersed, and Lin Yi, Han Jingjing, and Xinyan went back to their rooms. Chancellor Nantian went to continue his lecture with the heirs. Lin Yi sighed and decided to let Ling Shan, Sun Jingyi, Shirhan Chengyi, Ziyu, and Tianqi send them off. Wu Chintian, Pai Jishan, Pai Jihai, and the other henchmen would come to send Lin Yi off as well. The heirs all came back and gathered in Lin Yi's room. Meng Yao called Peng Zhan and Yi Weiner, telling them that they would be leaving tomorrow, but with a master like Lin Yi protecting them, it should be fine. Yushu called Chun Yuqian. As for the hidden house Yu, she automatically ignored them. Tang Yun, on the other hand, called her parents, and so did Xiao Xiao. Her mom, Xiao Susu, had woken up, and the poison in her body had been absorbed by Xiao Xiao as well. Xiao Xiao didn't have anything to worry about anymore. Yu Ning, on the other hand, called Yu Bing and House Yu, mentioning Shu's matter. Guan Xian, on the other hand, called Guan Shuamin and Boss Bai. Little Zhou, on the other hand, called Yang Chi-Chi. Everything had been arranged properly, and everyone went to rest early. Tomorrow was an important day. Lin Yi, on the other hand, couldn't fall asleep for a long time. Xinyan and Han Jingjing lay beside him. Tonight, Lin Yi wanted to test out that Creation's Art of Heaven's Path Foundation's chant. Although Chancellor Nantian had previously mentioned that there was a Vice Island Lord called Tian Xing, who cultivated the creation battle art on the Heavenly Stage Island. However, due to the incomplete mantra, he ended up going berserk. But just from the fact that he was able to become the Vice Island Master after practicing the Fortune-type battle arts, one could tell that the strength of the Fortune-type battle arts was quite strong. However, it was likely that it would be lacking in strength in the future. When it reached a higher realm, the flaws would become greater and greater, and Tian Xing had unfortunately gone mad. Chapter 3544. At the very least, when the will of heaven became the Vice Island Master, he couldn't have just started cultivating, right? He must have cultivated for a long time and possessed great strength. Therefore, in this case, only the will of heaven had cultivated this mantra for so long the others couldn't even cultivate this. And Lin, you wanted to give it a try. Of course, Lin Yi didn't want to force it like the will of heaven, but he wanted to combine the creation battle art and the fourth stage mantra of the art of dragon mastery into one. The fourth stage of the art of dragon mastery was a mantra to assist in breaking through the heavenly Tao. If the two were combined with the art of dragon mastery as the main and the creation battle art as the supplementary, and the omnipotent mantra obtained from the third stone door as the thread to form a new mantra, wouldn't it be a complete mantra? With the previous experience of combining martial arts, Lin Yi didn't think there was anything wrong with the martial arts he combined. It could be upgraded along the way, and its power was limitless. Therefore, it seemed that there shouldn't be any problems with the combined mantra. Therefore, Lin Yi did what he thought. After entering the space of the jade pendant, he began to use the omnipotent mantra to recombine the two mantra. Taking a deep breath, Lin Yi began to try the omnipotent mantra, then began to chant the fourth stage of the art of dragon mastery, seizing the heavens, and the creation battle art that Chancellor Nantian gave him. These two mantra kept alternating in Lin Yi's mind, interspersed with the mantra of the omnipotent mantra, and from the beginning, Lin Yi recited it. It turned into the contents of the two mantra, automatically circling around in Lin Yi's mind. Then, the order of the mantra began to get messy, and the two mantras slowly recombined, merging into a complete new mantra. Although Lin Yi already knew that these things from the Xianyuan cave abode weren't ordinary, he was still shocked at this time. This was the rhythm of being able to create his own mantra, and this newly fused mental cultivation method mnemonic formula. It was as if it had been imprinted in Lin Yi's mind, making Lin Yi unable to forget it even if he wanted to. What surprised Lin the most was that this newly fused practitioner's chant could be used as two parts of the practitioner's chant. This was quite a rare thing. If one were to cultivate it properly, the art of dragon mastery would be the main force, and the creation battle art would be the support. The reverse way of cultivating was to use the art of dragon mastery as a supplement, with the art of dragon mastery as a guide. However, Lin Yi was definitely going to cultivate. After all, his foundation was the art of dragon mastery, and the art of dragon mastery was a heaven-defying mantra. Lin Yi naturally couldn't put the cart before the horse and give up his original advantage. Lin Yi named this brand New Mantra Heaven's Fortune Battle Art before he calmed his excitement and joy. He began to cultivate in the space of the jade pendant. It was better to break through the way of heaven as soon as possible. No matter how good the mantra was, it would only be effective after cultivation. Since he already had a way to break through the way of heaven and become a foundation establishment expert, Lin Yi was determined not to waste time. The heavenly island was full of unknown dangers. Therefore, it was better for Lin Yi to improve his strength as soon as possible. Taking a deep breath, Lin Yi slowly calmed his mind and concentrated, and began to circulate this brand new mantra. All the qi in his body began to move, and it flowed along Lin Yi's meridians. Suddenly, Lin Yi felt as if his body and meridians were about to explode. This mantra didn't seem to be something that Lin Yi could control with his current strength. This kind of pain made even a heaven stage great perfection expert like Lin Yi feel a little unbearable. Lin Yi thought that his endurance was strong enough, but at this moment, he couldn't help but feel like he was about to die. However, the process of cultivation was an extremely long process. Even if it was incomparably painful, Lin Yi could only continue. He didn't think that there would be any problems with this mantra. After all, it was converted from the omnipotent mantra. It was just that the process was too torturous. This kind of pain lasted for a full hour. At this moment, Lin Yi was in so much pain that he was sweating profusely. Finally, the pain gradually weakened. Just when Lin Yi thought that he had adapted to this brand new mantra and could breathe a sigh of relief, his body suddenly shook violently. Chapter 3545. His entire person seemed to have changed. The Lin Yi at this moment felt like he was on a completely different level from before. It was as if he was looking down on all the other mountains, as if he was already standing on the peak in some sense. Was this the heavenly Tao? Was this foundation establishment? Lin Yi felt that even if he faced a heaven-rank great perfection expert, he could still easily kill him. There was no need for the sneak attacks and instant kills from before. This was the difference in absolute strength. Phew, Lin Yi heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly continued to circulate the mantra to consolidate his strength. Lin Yi discovered that ever since Wang Xinyan advanced to the sky rank, she had been giving him a lot of benefits. The energy provided had become even stronger. The night passed uneventfully. Lin Yi didn't tell anyone that he had stepped into the heavenly Tao. Lin Yi didn't want to publicize this because he would become the target of public criticism. The next morning, Lin Yi was talking with the girls when Zhong Pingliang came looking for him. Pingliang had supported Lin Yi yesterday, and while Lin Yi was surprised, he thought that Pingliang was doing this because he'd helped Nai Peo. His attitude wasn't too good either, though. After all, Pingliang had already returned the favor, so they were still enemies. Zhong Pingliang, what are you doing here? Lin Yi asked faintly. Boss Lin Yi, I'm just showing my loyalty to you, aren't I? I admire you a lot. Pow, call him boss. Pingliang said. Boss Lin Yi, please accept this little brother's bow. Nai Peo, on the other hand, was completely convinced by Lin Yi. If Pingliang asked him to call Lin Yi his boss, he'd do it, but he wouldn't do it willingly. However, Lin Yi had helped Nai Peo before, and Nai Peo was grateful for that. Now that Pingliang was asking him to do this, it made perfect sense. Plus, Nai Peo knew the reason. Therefore, he was not surprised. What are you two doing? Is there something wrong with him? Lin Yi looked at Pingliang curiously. Oh, Liangzi, you've thought it through? Was he finally going to be Shield Bro's lackey? I told you a long time ago that you wanted to be Shield Bro's follower. Look, you've finally become one. Yushu said proudly. Not bad, Sister Shu. Please take care of me in the future. Pingliang had lost all will to resist ever since he knew who Lin Yi was. Zhong Pingliang, are you serious? Lin Yi realized that Zhong Pingliang didn't seem to be joking. Of course not. I'm sincere. Furthermore, I promised Hero Lin of the Twin Vajra that I would be his junior's follower. Young Master Lin is Master Lin's descendant, so of course I have to call you boss. Pingliang explained. Vajra, double killer Lin? Who are you talking about? Lin Yi was baffled. Lin Dongfang, Master Lin. Pingliang paused. Could it be that Lin Yi didn't know about Lin Dongfang's past? But now that he thought about it, it was possible. Who would dare go against Lin Yi after all? That would be suicide. Lin Dongfang? Old man? My grandpa? Lin Yi was surprised. Yes. Pingliang was sure that Lin Yi didn't know. Then, do you know the other Vajra double killer Yang? Master Yang? Who? My Master Yang Ming? Lin Yi paused. Master Yang is Boss Lin Yi's master. No wonder Boss Lin Yi is so powerful. Pingliang was shocked. He was shocked enough that Lin Dongfang was Lin Yi's master, but Yang Ming was Lin Yi's master? This background was enough to kill everyone. At this moment, Pingliang decided that he would follow Lin Yi for the rest of his life. As far as he was concerned, Lin Dongfang and Yang Ming were so powerful back then, so their inheritors shouldn't be too shabby. Sky Class Island was full of unknown dangers, and he couldn't do it without a backer. So Pingliang felt that following Lin Yi would be good. So they are the Vajra double killer Yang. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. He had heard about how powerful the Vajra double killer Yang were, but he didn't expect them to be the two closest to him. That was it. His master had left with those Sky Class masters, but where did they go? Sky Class Island? Or was there another place? It wasn't hard for Lin Yi to understand why Pingliang was behaving like this. Pingliang's original body, the Mad Dragon Master, was killed by Lin Dongfang all those years ago. It made sense for him to be afraid of Lin Dongfang. As for why Pingliang knew about this, it was probably because he saw the background photo on his phone yesterday. However, Lin Yi wasn't very confident in Pingliang, but it was good to have such a follower on Sky Class Island. So he said, if that's the case, then follow me from now on. However, I also want to test you. If you're useless, why would I take you in? Okay. Pingliang nodded quickly and said, I'll definitely be useful. Even if I'm useless, I can still be a spy. Well, let's see your performance then. Lin Yi nodded. Pin Liang said goodbye, and Lin Yi and the others rested for a while. Wu Chuntian and the others also took a few cars to the inn, and the other participants and inheritors' friends also gradually came to see everyone off. Around 6 o'clock that night, the Xianqian ancestor was below the inn and shouted, "All participants and inheritors, please pay attention. Five Elements Sect is now making an important announcement. Sky Class Island will open tonight at 11:15. All participants and inheritors, please gather at the inn square immediately and head to Sky Class Island." This moment was finally coming. Lin, he was very excited. He brought the girls downstairs, and the other participants also went downstairs one by one and came to the empty square behind the inn. In the square, there were also the relatives and friends of the participants and inheritors, and the Xianqian ancestor had found a full 5 buses from somewhere. Kong, Ming Ming, and Tian Chan were organizing the participants and inheritors, as well as their relatives and friends, to get on the buses one by one. This feeling was like going to a certain place for a vacation. But in fact, it wasn't, as for the cars and luggage of the trial takers and inheritors, they would be taken away by the relatives and friends of the trial takers and inheritors when they returned. The Xuanzhen ancestor of the 5 Elements sect also came. The Xianqian ancestor didn't go to Sky Class Island, but chose to stay in the 5 Elements sect. The 5 Elements sect in the mortal world also needed someone to oversee it. Chapter 3546. When Lin Yi went back, he also suggested that Boss Bai should increase his strength, but Boss Bai refused. His next step was to wait for Bai Weiduo, and he may want to give him a great-grandson and enjoy the happiness of a family at home. He didn't want to get involved in the disputes between sects. Naturally, Lin Yi would take care of this. As long as Elder Xianqian wasn't in charge of the 5 Elements sect, he would be at ease. The 5 cars started slowly and headed towards the place where the island would appear. It was the west side of the 5 Elements sect, in the direction of the endless West Sea. The endless West Sea wasn't far from the 5 Elements sect. After about an hour's drive, everyone arrived at the shore of the endless West Sea. Everyone got off the car, and Elder Xianqian and Chancellor Nantian called Yuning and Yushu to the side. According to what they said before, they roughly confirmed the location and specific time of the island's appearance. As for the others, it was time for them to bid farewell to their family and friends. Lin Yi and his followers sat in a bus. The entire bus was filled with Lin Yi's people, and there were still a lot of people standing. When they came, they took 2 buses. "Boss, I brought Skybolt Pig too. You drive it to the island. Do you want to bring it along?" Wu Chuntian said. He followed Lin Yi's orders and brought everything that could be brought from Lin Yi's villa. He also prepared some daily necessities like a phone, a computer, a solar charger, and so on. God knew what was on the island. Okay. Lin, he casually put those things into the jade space. Skybolt Pig, on the other hand, made things difficult for him. How was he going to bring this little guy over? One had to know that when going to the island, although the inheritor and the originator had to work together to open a path, practitioners who were too weak couldn't go through. The same was true for spirit beasts. Any practitioner below the Peak of Sky class couldn't go through the path. They definitely couldn't pass through the passageway. Even with the inheritor, the opener, and Naipeo working together to defend against the aura, the leftover power was still quite strong. Thus, those who were too weak would be directly crushed to death by the pressure. Even if they were at the peak of the late stage of the heaven rank, if they hadn't reached the great perfection of the heaven rank, they would still be suffocated by the pressure. Only great perfection heaven rank powerhouses could safely pass through. To be honest, Lin went to Heaven Island. He wanted to bring the Skybolt Pig along, but how to bring it along was a rather complicated problem. Idiot Lin Yi, can't you put the Skybolt Pig into the space of the jade pendant you refined? Suddenly, Jiao Yazi's voice sounded in Lin Yi's ears. The space within the jade pendant. Lin Yi was slightly taken aback. I thought the space within the jade pendant couldn't contain living things. How can Skybolt Pig enter? That was before, not now. Elder Jiao said, you can put the Skybolt Pig into the space in the jade pendant you refined. There won't be a problem. I won't die. Oh, then can Tang Yun and I enter as well? Lin Yi was slightly taken aback as he asked, you can't for the time being. Humans can only use their primordial spirits to enter. Jiao Lao said, perhaps this function can be realized. Next time? Isn't the stone door the end of it? There's nothing left. I don't have the refining method either. Lin Yi was a little puzzled. When you enter the Heaven Rank Island through the passage to the mortal world, that pressure is something that my avatar can't withstand. At that time, I might not be able to wake up from my long slumber. Also, on the Heaven Rank Island, I might not be able to contact my main body. Even if I don't sleep, I won't be able to connect with my main body. I won't be able to function normally. Jiao Lao said, I see. Lin Yi suddenly felt a little sad. He had been accompanied by Jiao Lao this whole time. Was Jiao Lao about to leave? All right, Elder Jiao said, there's a limit to how much help I can provide. I won't be able to keep doing this forever. When I go into hibernation, or when I lose contact with my true self, I'll send the mnemonic chant, and some other things I know into your mind. Once you've reached a certain level of strength, the memories will automatically be unsealed and appear in your mind. All right, Lin Yi nodded and said firmly, Boss Lin Yi, are you going to bring it or not? Chen Tian saw that Lin Yi was silent and was confused. He didn't know that Lin Yi was talking to Jiao Yazi in the space of the jade pendant. Bring it, Lin Yi said, and picked up Skybolt Pig. Skybolt Pig disappeared into the space of the jade pendant. After entering, Lin Yi took a look and found that Skybolt Pig was still alive. There were no problems, and the little guy seemed to like the space of the jade pendant. The chi here was extremely rich, and Skybolt Pig loved it the most. It danced happily in the space of the jade pendant, and it was in high spirits. Ha! Boss Lin Yi, where did those things and Skybolt Pig go? Chen Tian was confused. Oh, I have a storage bag just like Doraemon's, Lin Yi said. Oh, okay. Chen Tian nodded and didn't ask. As far as he was concerned, Lin Yi had done too many miraculous things. This was nothing. After chatting with the people present, it was time for Lin Yi to leave. The Xianqian ancestor had already sent out a signal. Inheritors, practitioners, gather quickly. Other than the family and friends who had the Xuanjian ancestor in charge of maintaining order in the common world, the other inheritors and practitioners all gathered beside the Xianqian ancestor. Yuning, Yushu, take the main position behind the 8 trigrams. The Xianqian ancestor said, I'm too tired. Wait a bit. Yushu said lazily, Sky Class Island will only appear at midnight. What's the rush? That's right. I'm so tired. Let's all rest first. Meng Yao was naturally on the same side as Yushu. Stop bullshitting. You're still throwing a tantrum at a time like this. Hurry up and get ready to open the island seal. The Xianqian ancestor was panicking. This Yushu was really hard to deal with, dropping the ball at such a critical moment. You're so fierce, we're not opening it. Humph, Linny, honey, hurry up and get us some herbal tea. Our throats are burning. Xiao Xiao jumped out. Yeah, the scenery here is really good. Shield bro, let's camp here. Liangyi, help me hold up the tent, Yushu said with a smile. Chapter 3547 F***CK. I'm begging you guys, after we open the island, you guys can do whatever you want, just don't mess around here, okay? Kong Ming turned his head and dodged. He didn't think that these people would still do something like this when they were on the island. What made him even more curious was why Pin Liang was betraying them. He had to find a chance to ask him about it. This wasn't right. Pinleon was supposed to be on his side. He didn't understand. There's no use begging me. Go beg Shield Bro. Shu only listens to Shield Bro, Yushu said. F***CK. Kong Ming Ming didn't know what to do. He had just completely fallen out with Lin Yi, and now he had to beg Lin Yi? This made him very depressed, but there was nothing he could do. He sighed and walked to Lin Yi, who was standing there quietly. Lin Yi boss, you are the one who opened the island. Hurry up and give the order. Sky-class island is about to appear? Oh, no rush. Lin Yi took a deep breath and came out of the jade space. While no one was bothering him, he entered the jade space with his soul, planning to see if he could increase Skybolt Pig strength to Sky-class late-phase peak perfection. After all, when he was at Sky rank full cycle, he could only increase the strength of humans and spirit beasts to the peak of late Earth rank. Cultivators could use Qi gathering pills to advance to Sky rank full cycle, but not spirit beasts. The effect of Qi gathering pills for spirit beasts was negligible. Skybolt Pig entered the jade space, but Lin Yi was still worried that something might happen to him. Lin Yi was counting on Skybolt Pig to reunite with Zhang Liju. Otherwise, who would know who you were? You couldn't just say whatever you wanted. The notes of the refiner could be stolen, but Skybolt Pig couldn't. If Skybolt Pig didn't like you, then he didn't like you. If he complained to Zhang Liju, Zhang Liju might just slap you to death. And so, Lin Yi wanted to see if he could increase Skybolt Pig's strength. Of course, Lin Yi didn't plan on increasing Skybolt Pig's strength in front of everyone. Even if the people in the car were all his lackeys, spiritual energy would gather when spirit beasts leveled up. Xianchen Elder and the others were all Sky-class full perfection masters, and they weren't idiots. They couldn't possibly not feel the energy gathering in the car. If they found out that Skybolt Pig leveled up, they would be asking for trouble. Lin Yi didn't want others to know that he was already a Sky-class early phase master. Lin Yi could only increase his lackeys to Earth class when he was at Skybolt Pig. It wasn't a big secret, and anyone could find out about it if they wanted to. But Lin Yi was able to raise the pig's strength with his bare hands right now. It would be weird if there weren't any problems. Previously, Lin Yi had to use Qi gathering pills to help his followers reach perfection, but now he didn't need to. Most practitioners knew that spirit beasts couldn't level up by eating pills, so Lin Yi decided to secretly test it in the jade space. Skybolt Pig's main body was also in the jade space. Even if he leveled up, there wouldn't be any spiritual energy gathering outside. Lin Yi's soul entered the jade space and went into the space where Skybolt Pig was and started to level up. After the transformation of the jade space, only Lin Yi's soul could go back and forth. Tang Yun couldn't feel the existence of the other space, and she could only enter the main space. What surprised Lin Yi was that his golden finger was still working, and Skybolt Pig's strength was increased to Sky-class late-phase peak full perfection, especially the new Xianyuan art of Dragon Mastery and the creation battle art to form the new art of Dragon Mastery. The speed of improvement was even faster, and within half an hour, Skybolt Pig had become a Sky-class full perfection spirit beast. Boss Lin Yi, let's start, or else it'll be too late. Kong Ming Ming said with a bitter face, "Okay, everyone get ready." Lin Yi had to walk over at this time. Heaven Island couldn't be delayed, and Lin Yi had to go, or else he would have to accompany them. Lin Yi walked over, and the inheritors started to get ready. This made Ancestor Xianchen a little helpless. Suddenly, Lin Yi became the leader. In fact, with Lin Yi's current situation, Ancestor Xianchen definitely wouldn't dare to stop his heaven-class full perfection disciples from going to Heaven Island. It was just that most of Lin Yi's disciples were from ordinary families and hidden families. They hadn't set foot on the ancient level, so they didn't have such a pressing pursuit of the heavenly Tao. To them, heaven-class full perfection was already very satisfying. Their thoughts were still in the realm of the secular world, and they were unwilling to leave. Their goal was to revitalize their families, Yu Ning, Yu Shu, take the main position behind the 8 trigrams. Ancestor Xianchen spoke again. Yu Ning and Yu Shu, on the other hand, obediently stood in the position of the 8 trigrams. Lin, Hero Lin, stand in the center of the 8 trigrams. Ancestor Xianchen continued. Lin Yi nodded and took the center of the 8 trigrams. After him, Meng Yao, Xiao Xiao, Tang Yun, Guan Xian, and Little Nine stood in their respective positions. Zhang Naipeo, on the other hand, stood at the very front of the 8 trigrams, facing the endless West Sea, because he was in charge of blocking the most ferocious 5 malice demonic qi. Of course, the 5 malice demonic qi might have a huge side effect on a weakling like Tag On Long, but it didn't affect Lin Yi that much. However, the 5 malice qi and the power of the 5 elements and 7 elements were pressing down on Lin Yi at the same time. Most importantly, Lin Yi didn't seem to be able to circulate his practitioner's arts to defend against the pressure. He had to do something. Heirs, prepare yourselves. Chancellor Nan Tian spoke. Heaven-class island is about to appear. Chancellor Nan Tian's words made everyone's heart tighten. Everyone's expression turned solemn. On the originally calm surface of the sea, the heaven and earth spiritual qi began to gather gradually, and the waves began to surge violently. In just an instant, the energy above the sea surface became more and more violent, and the sea turned into raging waves. Yu Ning, Yu Shu quickly determined the specific location of Heaven-class island. Chancellor Nan Tian suddenly spoke loudly. The energy is gathering. Heaven-class island is about to appear. Chapter 3548. As soon as their voices fell, everyone turned to look in that direction. As expected, 30 degrees to the northeast, the energy of heaven and earth was the most violent. The wind howled and the waves surged. Although they couldn't see where the island was, it was good to know the direction. All inheritors, please get ready. The 5 elements and 5 malevolent energies will arrive at any time. Although Chancellor Nan Tian hated Lin Yi, he couldn't let him die. If he died, then no one would be able to go to the island, and he wouldn't be able to bring his new follower, the Xianchen ancestor. In the distance, the other challengers furrowed their brows as they watched the scene unfold before them anxiously. The power of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was far too great, far beyond their imaginations. At this moment, it was as if the whole world was shaking because of the appearance of the island. This situation lasted for about half an hour, and the violent heaven and earth spiritual qi seemed to become more and more violent. 30 degrees to the northeast, a white misty area gradually appeared. No one knew what it was, but everyone was very excited. Perhaps this was the legendary heavenly island. The island has appeared. All participants, get ready to land on the island. Chancellor Nan Tian shouted. The participants were excited, but they didn't dare to breathe too loudly, nor did they dare to cheer. All of them looked at the scene in front of them nervously, waiting for Chancellor Nan Tian's next order. The ground under their feet began to shake along with the violent energy of heaven and earth, and the waves became more and more turbulent, reaching tens of meters in height. That misty white area tugged at everyone's hearts. Suddenly, that white area on the surface of the sea suddenly shot out colorful rays of light. If one looked closely, they would be able to see colorful rays of light. If one looked closely, it was actually 7 colors, and there was a black glow. This should be the light of the 5 elements and 7 elements, and the black was the 5 malevolent energies. Everyone was very nervous at this moment. They stared at the white area without blinking. Was this the legendary heavenly island? The pressure is about to be activated. Inheritors and Zhang Naipeo, please protect the person who activated it. Chancellor Nan Tian shouted. As soon as he finished speaking, an intense and dazzling light shot out from Heaven Stage Island. Everyone's eyes were temporarily blinded. They were all at the great perfection of the heaven rank. Normally, even if they were stimulated by intense light, their vision wouldn't be affected. But this time, their eyes couldn't see anything, and even their perception was blinded. These inheritors were good too. Never had they imagined that in this world there would be such a dazzling light that they could not see anything at all. However, compared to the others, Lin Yi could sense the situation outside from the space of the jade pendant. However, no one knew when the white area had started to gradually approach the sea, or rather, they had been very close before. It was just that because of the light and shadow, everyone felt that it was very far away. As the intense light burst forth, the boundless might of the 5 elements and 7 attributes, as well as the might of the 5 evils chi, was suddenly released and swept towards the coast. "Hurry up and circulate the mantra to defend," Chancellor Nan Tian yelled. The pressure had already been fully concentrated on him. The inheritors and Zhang Naipeo didn't dare delay, hurriedly activating their mantras to defend against this torrential pressure. At this moment, there was a suffocating feeling. Zhang Naipeo was absorbing the 5 evils chi, and he was probably the one who was having the easiest time here. Although he kept on absorbing, he was having an easier time than the other inheritors. The power of the pressure was unbearable, making it hard for them to breathe. However, the inheritors all knew their own mission. If the one in the middle was Taganlam, they might not be working so hard, but the one in the middle was Lin Yi, the man they loved deeply, the man they would give up their lives for. And so all the inheritors gritted their teeth and held on. Beads of sweat rolled down from the foreheads of the inheritors. Lin Yi saw it all, and his heart ached, but there was nothing he could do. There was nothing he could do here. He had a mission to fulfill. As the pressure was released, the Sky Tier Island, which had been faintly discernible, gradually became clearer. Through the multicolored light, a huge white island appeared before everyone's eyes. It was as if the island was so far away, yet so close at the same time. However, this island seemed to have appeared out of thin air, because when they arrived, there was nothing on the calm surface of the sea. 4th dimensional space. Jiao Lao's voice rang in Lin Yi's ears. Sky Grade Island is hidden in a 4th dimensional space. 4th dimensional space? Lin Yi paused. That's right, it's similar to the Jade space. Sky Grade Island is a 4th dimensional space hidden in the endless West Sea. No wonder with our current technology, we can't find this island the size of a small country. Jiao Lao said. I see. Lin Yi understood. The Jade space couldn't be found by normal people, right? But in this case, not everyone could enter and exit Sky Grade Island. No wonder they had to use an array to open the seal. Pioneer, pay attention. Your mission is coming. Just as Lin Yi and Jiao Lao were sighing, Chancellor Nan Tian's voice rang out. Get ready. When the light beam channel opens, step onto the light beam channel and open Sky Grade Island. Light beam channel. Lin Yi was slightly stunned, but in the next moment, he saw a light beam shoot into the middle of the 8 trigrams array, where Lin Yi was standing. Quickly enter the light beam and open the seal. Chancellor Nan Tian shouted. Lin Yi was slightly stunned. He was surprised to find that the light beam was actually a physical object, which meant that he could walk on the light beam. Thinking of this, Lin Yi didn't dare to delay. He quickly stepped onto the light beam and walked forward. However, the pressure around him made it difficult for Lin Yi to balance. However, he didn't dare to divert his attention to resist the pressure because the light beam was in the shape of a cylinder and the surface was extremely smooth. If Lin Yi was distracted, he would fall. Inheritor, hurry up and circulate the mantra. Otherwise, Lin Yi will be in great danger. The pressure above will concentrate on him and turn him into pieces. Patriarch Xianchen roared. He said this to threaten the inheritor to do their best. Chapter 3549. Lin Yi followed the light pillar and carefully climbed to the top. At the top, Lin Yi saw something that looked like a rotating five-pointed star. It was this thing that was constantly emitting five-colored light. Initiator, place your hands on it and chant the mantra, Chancellor Nan Tian said loudly. Lin Yi followed the instructions and placed his hands on the rotating five-pointed star. Only then did he realize that the five-pointed star wasn't in a physical state, but an illusion. However, regardless of what it was, Lin Yi quickly began to chant the mantra. When Lin Yi began to chant the mantra, there seemed to be some kind of force pushing Heaven Level Island. Heaven Level Island, which was originally half submerged in the sea, suddenly rose from the sea and became bigger and bigger. Finally, at the edge of the coastline, a passageway array formation suddenly appeared. It was just like the array formation that led everyone to the Five Fiends Wilderness and the Five Fiends Mountain Range. At this moment, Lin Yi finally understood that this passageway was opened by the power of the five elements. Something seemed to be hinting to him that if he stopped chanting the mantra, this passageway would disappear. At this moment, Lin Yi wanted to jump down and quickly rush into the passageway with the inheritors. However, Lin Yi helplessly realized that his hands seemed to be glued to something. He couldn't pull them back at all. This feeling was the same as when he was at the stone door of the cave. It made him unable to extricate himself. Just as he thought of retreating, a voice seemed to be hinting to him that this was his mission. The initiator had to persist until the last moment. Only at the last moment could they enter the passageway of Heaven Level Island. They were burning themselves to help the other cultivators who wanted to enter the island. This was their mission. It turned out that being an initiator wasn't a good job. That silly tag-along was still very proud of himself. However, Lin Yi didn't regret it. After all, he had to do this for the sake of the inheritors. Lin Yi could feel the exhaustion of the inheritors. If they didn't give it their all, they wouldn't be able to survive. That coercion would fall on Lin Yi's body, and it was hard to say whether Lin Yi could be killed by the coercion. But the opening of the heavenly island would definitely stop. The passageway has appeared. The trial takers are beginning to ascend the island. Xianchen, follow me first. With that, Chancellor Nan Tian took the lead and charged into the passageway, and Patriarch Xianchen followed closely behind. Immediately after, Kong Mingming and the other trial takers also entered the Tunnel 1, by one according to the order they had lined up. They could also see that the inheritor was trembling and probably wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. We need to get to the island as soon as possible. Tian Shan, Song Lingrui, Rock, Candy, Sydney, Wang Xinyan, Han Jingjing, Xiao Ran, Zhong Pingliang, and the others were very worried about Lin Yi and the inheritors, but they had to enter the passageway according to the order. They could only pray that Lin Yi and the others could enter the passageway successfully in the end. However, when everyone entered the passageway, Guan Xian suddenly couldn't hold on anymore. Her body swayed, and she directly fell to the ground. Guan Xian was one of the inheritors, the woman with the weakest foundation. Following closely behind was Little Nine, and behind her, Meng Yao, Yushu, Yuning, Tang Yun, and Xiao Xiao also fell to the ground one by one. It seemed that they couldn't hold on anymore, and also fainted on the spot. Once they fainted, the coercion on Lin Yi's side suddenly increased, and the huge majestic force directly pressed him down from the light pillar. Lin Yi fell into the sea. This shocked Lin Yi, but he was worried about the inheritors. He wanted to see how Meng Yao and the others were doing, but what shocked Lin Yi was that after he left the light pillar, the passageway of the island actually became more and more illusory, and the entire island began to sink again. The entire heavenly stage island began to sink again. Lin Yi panicked. At this moment, he was stuck between a rock and a hard place. He knew that after he left, the passageway of the island would disappear. If he quickened his pace, he could go in, but what about Meng Yao and the others? Even if Lin Yi ran over and saved one of them, he couldn't save a second one. After all, the 8 trigrams formation was very big, and each inheritor was very far away from each other. It would be very difficult for Lin Yi to save one and come back. Take care of them for me. Wait for me to come back. Lin Yi yelled to his lackeys and quickly flew into the passageway. He had to go to Sky Class Island. Meng Yao and the others didn't seem to be much of a problem. Lin Yi could at least sense their life force, and so he asked his lackeys to bring them back. Ling Shan, Sun Jingyi, Shirhan, Cheng Yi, Ziyu, and the others all rushed over, and this was the last scene Lin Yi saw. Nai Peo hesitated for a bit before following, but the path was already starting to flicker. Whether or not he'd be able to reach Sky Class Island was up to luck now. Yao Yao, Shu, Tang Yun, Xiao Xiao Yuning, Guanex and Zhou. Wait for me to come back. Lin Yi sighed. He thought that they would be his biggest helpers on Sky Class Island, but they fainted all of a sudden. The last scene Lin Yi saw was them fainting around the 8 trigrams formation, and with a flash of white light the passageway disappeared, and so did Nai Peo. Lin Yi and the others all disappeared under the white light. The only thing that made Lin Yi feel at ease was that his lackeys and the women he left behind were all top-level practitioners, Sky Class Late Phase Peak. They were the strongest in the common world. With them, Lin Yi didn't need to worry about Yao Yao and the others. After entering the passageway, Lin Yi suddenly felt like he'd entered an illusory space, and then his eyes lit up. In front of him was a white light, and Lin Yi was temporarily blinded. Lin Yi subconsciously closed his eyes and entered the jade space, activating his spiritual sense to sense his surroundings. But what disappointed Lin Yi was that there was only white light around him, and there was nothing else. It was like a strange space, and Lin Yi couldn't even see his companions or enemies. His feet, on the other hand, seemed to be floating in midair, unable to step on anything. It was like he was in a weightless state. Since he was already here, Lin Yi knew that there was nothing he could do right now. He could only wait quietly. Chapter 3550. Lin Yi opened his eyes and saw a bare high platform, and standing on the high platform, there was not only Lin Yi, but also Kong Mingming, Zhong Pingyang, Dongfang Badeo, Unfathomable Fist, and Xiao Ran. In addition, there were no other participants. Only 6 people. Of course, apart from Unfathomable Fist and Xiao Ran, who were not particularly familiar with Lin Yi. Among them, only Kong Mingming and Dongfang Badeo had a big grudge against Lin Yi. Zhong Pingliang, Lin Yi's current underling, was considered an ally, but where were the others? Tian Chan? Song Lingrui? Zhang Nai Peo? Xianchen Ancestor? Where's the snow pair with rock sugar? Wang Xinyan and Han Jingjing? They all disappeared together in the teleportation channel in front of the Heavenly Island. How did they all disappear? However, the high platform where Lin Yi was now was surrounded by cliffs, and there were no obstacles on it. It was clear at a glance how many people were here, and there was no room to hide. What kind of F** king place is this? This is Heavenly Island? Why is there nothing? Kong Mingming came back to his senses and couldn't help but curse. Damn. Are we being cheated? Boss Lin Yi, what do you think? Zhong Pingliang was also a little puzzled. Was this Heavenly Island? But there was nothing on this island. How could it be called Heavenly Island? Also, where did Zhang Nai Peo go? The chi of heaven and earth here is very abundant, but we are alone here. I don't see any sex or people. This is very strange. Lin Yi had never been to Heavenly Island, so this place made Lin Yi a little puzzled. Before, everyone imagined how beautiful Heavenly Island was, and there were many masters on it, helping everyone to break through the Heavenly Tao. But now, not to mention masters, there was only a cliff. There was nothing, so how could they deal with it? He looked into the distance again. The platform was surrounded by white mist. It was impossible to see anything in the distance. The only thing that could be clearly seen was that below the platform was a cliff that was tens of thousands of feet high. Moreover, it was so deep that one couldn't see the bottom of it. Further down, the fog was too thick to see. Dongfang Badeo was one of the most active people. When he came here, he found that it was different from what he imagined, and other people didn't know where to go, and suddenly 3/4 of the people were missing. Who would be happy in such a situation? Could it be that when those people came over, they didn't stand firmly on the high platform and fell directly into the cliff? Thinking of this, everyone broke out in a cold sweat. But after calming down, Lin Yi wasn't as naive as he thought. Lin Yi felt that since this Heaven Stage Island's teleportation array could send all these people over, then it should be able to send them over. Of course, he couldn't let some of them die, right? Then these people might have been teleported over, but they might have been teleported to other similar places. This reminded Lin Yi of the trial of Heavenly Elixir Sect. Everyone was teleported to the Five Evils Savage Land, and the environment here was a bit like the Five Evils Savage Land. Although there was no Five Evils chi here, this was a kind of intuition. Limitless Fist Master, what do you think? Dongfang Badeo couldn't help but ask. This Limitless Fist Master was the great elder of the Holy Fist Palace, because of Li Siba. The Holy Fist Palace did not oppose Lin Yi before, but it could not be said that their relationship was very good. I can't see it for the time being. The Limitless Fist Master shook his head. But since the Heavenly Stage Island is so powerful, I don't think it will harm us. I don't think he will harm us. Let's just wait. Look at young hero Lin. He isn't anxious at all. Humph, we are all on the island, and everyone is equal. Young hero Lin is just a junior. Dongfang Badeo snorted coldly, because before everyone opened the Heaven Stage Island, they also said at the Heaven Stage meeting that everyone's purpose was to successfully reach the Heaven Stage Island. So in the process of opening the Heaven Stage Island, they could not attack each other. Therefore, Dongfang Badeo now did not take the initiative to provoke Lin Yi, and Lin Yi could not kill him, so he was a little unscrupulous. Of course, this agreement might be invalid after everyone went to the island and formed a gang, but at least it was still valid now. Everyone stayed on this high platform for more than half an hour, and they were inevitably a little strange and anxious. What was this idea? Would the Heaven Stage Island be a high platform, and then everyone would die alone on it? There was not even a woman here, and they could not reproduce. Homosexuality could not be passed on to the next generation. Is there anyone? Damn it! Kong Ming finally waited impatiently and shouted loudly. His voice echoed in the sky, but no one answered him. Boss Lin Yi, it can't be the predecessor of the Heaven Stage Island to test us, right? Zhong Pingliang had the memory of the mad dragon patriarch in his mind, so he still knew about the customs of these ancient people. He thought about it and asked, Test? I can't rule out this possibility. Linny nodded, but at least there should be some hints. Let's wait and see. Zhong Pingliang nodded, then ran to the side and wandered around, presumably looking for any hints on this high platform. However, after about 10 minutes, suddenly there was a long roar in the sky, which made everyone who was a little anxious suddenly serious, and they looked up at the sky. They saw a flying spirit beast in the distant sky. Although this was only a spirit beast, it also made everyone excited, because at least this meant that there were creatures nearby, and it was not a lonely dead island. At this time, when the flying spirit beast flew closer, everyone became even more excited because there was a person sitting on the back of the flying spirit beast. Although the age and gender of the person couldn't be seen clearly, anyone who could appear here must be a peerless expert. Senior, wait a minute, Kong Ming shouted. Among them, he was the one who was most anxious to leave. Here. Dongfang Badeo also shouted. He came here to break through the heavenly Tao, not to waste time on this high platform. However, They didn't need to call. The flying spirit beast itself would fly here. They saw the spirit beast flying lower and lower, and the person on the spirit beast could be seen by everyone. This was a man about 30 years old, but it was said to be 30 years old because of his appearance. His actual age was unknown. After all, the masters here were likely to be masters above the heavenly Tao. The heaven stage could already keep their appearance forever, let alone the masters of the heavenly Tao. Chapter 3551. Who is the old, weak, sick, and disabled? Dong Fong Badeo's temper was as overbearing as his name. This man said that he was old, weak, sick, and disabled. Naturally, he was not happy. Those who could successfully land on the Heaven Stage Island were the best in the cultivation world. He was feeling good about himself. When the man said that, his face suddenly became ugly. I used to be the master of the Dongfang family, an ancient family. I was a master of the great perfection of the peak late stage of Heaven Stage. The man's eyes were fierce. He raised his sleeves, and an invisible strength shot out of his hand. Dongfang Badeo was directly knocked to the ground with a puff. He struggled on the ground for a long time before he got up with a red face, but he dared not make trouble again. What kind of master was the person who could teach him a lesson through the air? Looking at the whole cultivation world, it was the unique existence. Even Lin, he could not. It's really weak. The man snorted, and then said to Lin Yi and others impatiently, I am the welcoming envoy of the North Island of Heaven Stage. I will take you to the welcoming pavilion of the North Island to report. You newcomers, who will go with me? Senior, I'll go. Dongfang Badeo completely put away his previous arrogance at this time. He could not see the strength of the man in front of him. Obviously, he was of a higher level than him, and he was to guide them to the welcoming pavilion, so he could not make trouble. Old man, what are you yelling for? You have offended the welcoming envoy. Let me go. Kong Mingming said, immediately at the moment, because it seemed that only 2 or 3 people could sit on the flying spirit beast. He didn't know if 3 people could sit down, so he must fight for a chance for himself. My spirit beast can only sit 3 people. In that case, you 2 come up first. The man said faintly, we have to go up too. Zhong Pingliang pulled Lin Yi at this time, and then said to Kong Mingming and Dongfang Badeo, are you going to rob us? Chapter 3552. It seemed that the young man had expected to receive Lin Yi and Xiao Ran. However, his attitude was not as arrogant as the previous 2. Instead, he looked quite approachable. Okay, thank you, Senior. Xiao Ran glanced at Lin Yi and boarded the flying spirit beast. Lin Yi followed him. The flying spirit beast slowly took off. Xiao Ran could not help but ask, Senior, how should I address you? The freckled man shook his head and said, all right, don't call me Senior. I'm just a bitter guy. Call me Senior Brother Bitter Guy. Ha! Xiao Ran was stunned. He thought the freckled man was approachable, but he did not expect him to be so easygoing. He even gave himself the nickname Senior Brother Bitter Guy. Both of you are rogue cultivators from the secular world, right? Senior Brother Bitter Guy asked, sort of, how did you know? This surprised Lin Yi. He knew about Xiao Ran's background. It was okay to say that he was a rogue cultivator. After all, the Xiao family was no longer an ancient aristocratic family. There are 6 people who were teleported to the North Island this time. The first person who came to pick them up was from the Soaring Pavilion. Those 2 must be ruthless figures from the Big Sex, right? Senior Brother Bitter Guy asked, with a smile. Yes, Senior Brother Bitter. How did you know? Xiao Ran was also a little surprised. The second person who came to pick them up was from the mysterious pavilion. Those 2 must be cultivators who look very old, right? Senior Brother Bitter Guy continued to guess. That's right. Lin Yi nodded. Senior brother bitter. Why is that? Senior brother Kubai did not explain further, continuing, I am the Clear Cloud Pavilion's guide envoy. Our Clear Cloud Pavilion has the lowest status among the 3 pavilions. Every time we choose a disciple, we are always the last to choose a disciple. Most of the disciples who join us are rogue cultivators with humble origins. Senior brother, do you mean those people from before? Does that count as joining the Soaring Sky Pavilion and the Mysterious Pavilion? Linny was a bit surprised. He didn't expect the Heaven Step Island to be like this. There was actually a sect here, and it seemed like there were 3 different factions in this sect. This was a bit of a headache. That's right. The Soaring Sky Pavilion was the most popular pavilion on the North Island of the Heaven Steps. Here were some second-generation cultivators and the outstanding descendants of the island's famous families, even if they came from the secular world. They're also the core disciples of big sections. Senior Marshal Brother Kubai said, they're the people on the North Island of Heaven stage, the ones you can't provoke the most. Next was the Mysterious Pavilion. That mysterious pavilion was filled with old men. Naturally, it couldn't be said that the other pavilions didn't have any old men, but their pavilions had a lot of them. Moreover, they didn't like young people, even those with tender faces who had advanced to the heaven rank early on and retained their youthful appearance, unless they were their own descendants. This group of people took advantage of their seniority. Some of them were the elders of the North Island, although they were not as powerful as the Soaring Sky Pavilion. But he wasn't weak either, and the weakest is our Blue Cloud Pavilion. Well, the grassroots aren't weak either, Lin Yi said with a bitter smile. There's still a big difference. Senior Marshal Brother Bai shook his head. Our cultivation foundation wasn't as solid as theirs, so when we were both at the peak of the late stage of the heaven stage, there was a gap. There's a difference. Breaking through to the heavenly Tao is equivalent to my current level. We're called foundation establishment experts here, and there's also a difference in strength. Don't look at the name Blue Cloud Pavilion. When it was first named, it meant that those grassroots could rise rapidly here, but Also, don't mention the term Heavenly Tao anymore. Heavenly Tao is a big category. If you tell others that you're a Heavenly Tao expert, then others will think that you're arrogant. Oh, I can't say it. Lin Yi was slightly stunned. Didn't the secular world say Heavenly Tao? Could it be that there was a higher level above foundation establishment? As for the matters of the 3 pavilions, Lin Yi didn't care too much about it for the time being. Well, the so-called Heavenly Tao is a general term for an ethereal level. Senior Marshal Brother Bai was not stingy with his words and said everything he knew. Before, we cultivators were divided into internal and external paths. Qi refinement and body refinement were all to improve the strength of the body, while Heavenly Tao is a pursuit that goes against the heavens. You can also understand it as cultivation. Before cultivation, now cultivation. In the secular world before Heavenly Tao, your strength was equivalent to the Qi refinement stage among cultivators. After stepping into Heavenly Tao, you're at the foundation establishment stage, and only then can you be considered to have truly touched the path of cultivation. You're Heavenly Tao, but you're not the strongest. Lin Yi didn't expect that there seemed to be many levels above Heavenly Tao. Of course, I'm only at the early phase of foundation establishment. Above me, there's still the peak of the early phase, the middle phase. Senior Marshal Brother Bai explained. Hearing this, Lin Yi's complacent mood dropped to the bottom. When he was in the secular world, he used the omnipotent arts with the art of dragon mastery and the art of dragon mastery stealing the heavens, and successfully broke through to Heavenly Tao. It was a brand new level of strength, and Lin Yi thought that he had reached the final stop of a cultivator. As long as he went to Sky Class Island and found the Pill St. Zhang Liju, he could find a way to wake Xiaoka and Armadillo, and then he could go back. What he didn't expect was that Xiaoka still hadn't woken up and 7 more inheritors were unconscious. The pressure on Lin Yi's body was like a mountain. But that was okay. He could just ask Zhang Liju. What he didn't expect was that his strength was the weakest. It seemed a little different from what Lin Yi had thought when he first came here, looking for Zhang Liju in a high-profile manner. Very well, but it looks like our clear cloud pavilion is the most harmonious pavilion. Senior Brother Ku is so amiable, and those 2 envoys who tried to approach earlier are so arrogant. Xiao Ran nodded his head and said he didn't think that joining Blue Cloud Pavilion was inappropriate. He was a low-profile person, and after coming here, naturally he had to be more low-profile. He didn't have anyone to rely on, and his strength wasn't that good either, so he had to be careful. Harmonious? He. Senior Marshal Brother Ku Bai laughed weirdly. I won't say much. You'll know when you see it, isn't it? Lin Yi paused. He thought that this Blue Cloud Pavilion was made up of grassroots, and that it should be a harmonious pavilion. I'm harmonious, but that doesn't mean others are. I was sent here because of Senior Marshal Brother Ku Bai. I'm someone who gets bullied, and that's my personality. Senior Marshal Brother Ku Bai shook his head. Isn't this welcoming good? Those 2 from before, weren't they really strong? Xiao Ran didn't understand. Chapter 35:53. But this was the North Island, and he was from the Middle Island, so Lin Yi didn't have to worry about him looking for trouble for now. This confirmed Lin Yi's suspicions this island was divided into many areas, and the other participants had probably gone to other islands. Previously, they were here to pick the best ones, and I'm here to pick the rest. Regardless of who's left, I'm going to pick them up. If the eldest senior brother in charge finds out that I'm here to pick you 2 loose cultivators, I'm going to be scolded again. This is a thankless job. Who would want to do it? The bitter Shi Xiang shook his head. That's all he can do to bully me. If he has the guts, he should go fight with Chong Tian and Xuanji Pavilions. So we're the weakest here. Lin Yi was a little speechless. Senior Brother Ku, we're okay, right? We're not that weak. Man, there's no need for that, I get it, but I'm used to being scolded. It's fine. The bitter Shi Xiang shook his head. But Linny could tell that this bitter Shi Xiang was a good person, answering all his questions. At this point, Xiao Chen already knew that the heaven-ranked North Island was only a part of the heaven-ranked island. There were other teleportation platforms on the heaven-ranked island, and there were also other people in charge of receiving them. As for where they were sent to, that bitter senior brother did not know. With his ability, he really did not know that much. Ku Shixiang, have you heard of this Zhang Liju? Lin Yi finally asked the question he wanted to ask the most. Since he knew that Tian Chan and the others went to other places, Lin Yi was relieved. Since they were all on Sky Class Island, he'd see them sooner or later. Zhang Liju? Elixir God Zhang Liju? Senior brother Ku Bai blanked for a second before replying, I know, he's a famous person from our heaven-rank North Island. As for where he is now, I'm not sure. I'm just a grassroots disciple selected from a nearby village, and it hasn't been long since I joined the Clear Cloud Pavilion. I don't know. To put it bluntly, we're all newbies, but I'm a bit luckier, and I've already broken through to Sky Dao, and I'm a foundation building practitioner now. Thank you, Senior Brother Ku. Lin Yi nodded. He didn't have a definite answer, but Lin Yi knew that Zhang Liju should be here. Back in the tomb, Lin Yi already suspected that Zhang Liju wasn't dead, and that something was missing from the tomb. Lin Yi was even more certain that Zhang Liju had gone back to get his stuff. Since Zhang Liju had broken through Sky's Dao, he should be on Sky Class Island. While Lin Yi and Zhong Pingliang were inquiring about the situation with this bitter senior brother, Kong Mingming and Zhong Pingliang, who had set off earlier, were already having a good time with their guide. Unlike the bitter senior brother, their guide had a powerful background. His name was Su Lingchong. He was the grandson of the third elder of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. the second generation of cultivation. In every pavilion, the person with the most authority was the pavilion master. It was the few elders. However, the pavilion master rarely asked about such small matters. It was already good enough for an elder to show up for the welcoming ceremony. Damn, 30 years old, and he's already a foundation builder. Those so-called cultivation geniuses are just a pile of sh*t compared to senior brother Sue. Kong Mingming said flatteringly after finding out about the background of the guy. He knew very well that if he wanted to establish himself on Sky Class Island, relying on his own strength was definitely not enough. The most important thing was to get on someone's good side, and this Su Lingchong in front of him was obviously a very thick thigh. As long as he could get on his good side, not only would he be able to establish himself on Sky Class Island, he would even be able to find Lin Yi for revenge in the future. Back then, he relied on kissing Little Peach's ass to get in touch with the Xianxian elder. If he were to get in touch with the pavilion master, this Su Lingchong would also become Kong Mingming's stepping stone. In Kong Mingming's eyes, he would become a pile of sh*t, just like Little Peach. Su Lingchong was overjoyed, thinking that this kid was not bad. However, on the surface, he still pretended to smile indifferently. Kong Mingming's flattery had hit the bottom of his heart. Looking at the whole Sky Class North Island, there were not many who could set foot in the Heavenly Law Foundation establishment before the age of 30. There were only a few in each batch of disciples. Although Su Lingchong's strength was largely built up by all kinds of precious resources, the strength of the early stage of foundation establishment was enough to crush many geniuses of the same generation. Kong Mingming's ability to read people's expressions was very strong. Looking at Su Lingchong's expression, he knew that his flattery was right this time. He immediately struck while the iron was hot and said, "Before coming to Heaven Class Island, I thought that a guy like Lin Yi, who reached the peak of the late stage of Heaven Class at the age of 19, was already a super genius that could not be found in 10,000 years. But now that I see senior brother Su, I know that this idea is too ridiculous. Looking at cultivation from the perspective of the secular world is simply looking at the sky from the bottom of a well. If one wanted to please someone, not only must he know how to flatter, but he must also set up a common enemy for each other. Only in this way could he close the relationship as soon as possible. This was the experience that Kong Mingming had concluded. Just like him and the Xianxian elder, it was like this. From the performance of this senior brother Su just now, he should look down on those so-called cultivation geniuses. As long as they were geniuses, they were usually arrogant and had a sense of superiority. This kind of person could not tolerate experts of the same kind. Sure enough, Su Lingchong quickly took the bait. A 19-year-old at the peak of Heaven Class? Could that Lin Yi be a core disciple of some big sect in the secular world? No, he's just an ordinary grassroots loose cultivator, but he's so awesome that he's unparalleled in the world. He's super good at acting cool. Kong Mingming quickly said, "Grassroots loose cultivator? Acting cool?" Su Lingchong showed disdain and said, "Then maybe he picked up some unorthodox cultivation method. Although his level increased very quickly, his foundation is not stable, and his strength is definitely not much. Even if this kind of person is at the peak of the late stage of Heaven Class, to succeed in building his foundation, it's as difficult as ascending to heaven. That's normal. You know the frog at the bottom of the well, right? There's no one around him to compare with if Senior brother Su's eyes are really sharp. If he knew about senior brother Su, he would have long been shocked to the point of schizophrenia. However, that Lin Yi relied on some small tricks to run amok in the secular world. Everyone dared to be angry, but did not dare to say anything. "Senior brother Su, you have to uphold justice for us." Kong Mingming pretended to be pitiful. "There's such a thing. Isn't he just a grassroots loose cultivator? How dare he bully you? Is the sect behind you weak to this extent?" Su Lingchong frowned. Chapter 3554. Pin Liang, on the other hand, curled his lips. What face? It was obvious that he was afraid of Boss Lin Yi's beating. Kong Mingming was really good at making up stories, but he could tell that Kong Mingming had already fooled this Su Shixiang. If he spoke up for Lin Yi, he might offend this Su Shixiang. It was best to wait and see what other tricks Kong Mingming had up his sleeve. Besides, Lin Yi had sent him here to be a spy. He couldn't act rashly. He just needed to report to Lin Yi in time. So he pretended to be nonchalant and asked, Su Shixiang, if the two of us go with you, will there be no one to care about the others? Not really. According to tradition, after the soaring pavilion selects people, the remaining people will be picked up by the other two pavilions. Su Lingchong said as he looked at Kong Mingming, the mysterious pavilion will only pick some old men. Since that Lin Yi you mentioned is so young, he must have been picked up by the weakest blue cloud pavilion. That's the famous trash shelter. Grassroots solo practitioners didn't have a strong foundation, and since the newcomers were the leftovers from the other two pavilions, Blue Cloud Pavilion's newcomers were the weakest in terms of strength and potential. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that it was a trash shelter. Trash shelter? Doesn't that mean we can bully them in the future? Kong Mingming's eyes lit up. You don't have to wait. You can bully those trash later. I want to see how arrogant that Lin Yi can be. Su Lingchong smiled meaningfully. That's quite arrogant. Kong Mingming pretended to be excited. When Su Shixiang came to pick us up, the kid next to brother Zhong Pingyang didn't even spare a glance at Su Shixiang. He didn't even want to come up. Luckily, brother Zhong Pingyang changed his ways. Otherwise, he would have gone to the trash shelter too. Oh, that kid? He doesn't look like much. Those who were powerful were the ones who acted cool. Those without strength are called idiots. In a while, I'll show you what an idiot is. Su Lingchong nodded faintly and looked at Zhong Pingyang. But how did you change your mind? You used to follow that Lin Yi or something. It's a long story. He stole my woman and my underling. I have nothing left, and one of my kidneys was cut off by him. If I want to survive, I can only pretend to be courteous to him. But it's all good now. I have a big backer like Senior Brother Su. I don't need to be afraid. Zhong Pingyang said pitifully. F*CK, why are you so unlucky? Fortunately, you're with me. Otherwise, you'd be bullied to death. Su Lingchong was a little disdainful of Pin Liang, but he was his man now, and the kid had a way with words, so he accepted him. As they spoke, the aerial spirit beast had already landed in an open space. In front of him was a magnificent pavilion. In the middle of the main door were 3 huge golden words on a black background. Welcoming new pavilion. At this moment, there were already people waiting in front of the door. As soon as the flying spirit beast landed, a circle of people immediately surrounded them. The person in the lead had white hair and a youthful complexion. He had an imposing appearance, and when he faced others, he always had the demeanor of a master. He only bowed to Su Lingchong. This is the pavilion master of Welcoming New Pavilion, Hu Yunfeng. Although the two of you were chosen by Soaring Pavilion, before you succeed in your foundation building, you still have to stay in Welcoming New Pavilion to train. He will take care of you in the future. Su Lingchong nodded his head at Hu Yunfeng as he introduced the place to Hu Yunfeng. Master Su, don't worry. As long as I'm here, Welcoming New Pavilion won't lose out to you two. Hu Yunfeng stroked his white beard and guaranteed with a smile. Although Hu Yunfeng was the pavilion master of Welcoming New Pavilion in name, and it sounded very powerful, he was actually just a small team leader in the training camp. He was on a completely different level compared to Soaring Pavilion. Not to mention the pavilion master. Even an elder from Soaring Pavilion was a big figure that he had to try his best to climb up to and look up to. The reason why he was able to sit as the pavilion master of Welcoming New Pavilion was because he had the support of Soaring Pavilion's elder. Naturally, he had to curry favor with Su Lingchong, the precious grandson of the third elder. The position of the pavilion master of welcoming new pavilion still had some benefits, and he was still hoping to continue doing it. Even if he managed to reach the peak of welcoming new pavilion in the future, when he was promoted to be a manager of one of the three great pavilions, he still needed to have a strong network. Oh, it's the pavilion master. No wonder you have such an elegant demeanor. My name is Kong Ming Ming. I'm new here, and I hope that the pavilion master will take care of me in the future. Kong Ming Ming flattered with the spirit of sucking up to everyone. Although he had already established a friendship with Su Ling Chong, the second generation of cultivation. Su Ling Chong was still an inner disciple of the Soaring Sky Pavilion after all. He would not stay in the welcoming pavilion for long. The pavilion master of the welcoming pavilion in front of him was a good target for him to take advantage of in the future. Realistically speaking, how he would fare in the welcome pavilion from now on would depend entirely on whether the pavilion master would support him or not. If Kong Ming Ming thought of this, Zhong Pingliang naturally thought of it as well. He didn't dare to be negligent, and quickly added, "My name is Zhong Pingliang. I don't dare to say anything else, but I can definitely be an assistant. In the future, if the pavilion master needs anything, just tell me, and I'll be there." Of course, of course. Both of you are talented, and you have a big backer like young Master Su. You will definitely have a bright future in the future. Seeing that the two of them were so agreeable, Hu Yunfeng was naturally happy to help them. Not only could he please Su Lingchong, but he could also get 2 more followers. It was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. One had to know that in this welcoming new pavilion, it didn't mean that his words carried weight just because he was the pavilion master. There were still 2 vice pavilion masters behind him, eyeing him like a tiger watching its prey. If he wanted to suppress his opponents and stabilize his position as the pavilion master, one of the keys was to curry favor with a strong backer like the elder of Soaring Pavilion. The other key was how many followers he could get. The more followers he had, the more power he would have. Only then could he truly be the master of the house. Moreover, what made Hu Yunfeng the happiest was that even though he wasn't weak now, his hair was still white before he broke through to Sky Class late phase peak. That was why he had a grandfather face. This was actually quite a shameful thing on Sky Class Island. Even though he looked like a baby, he might even be older than him. He really wasn't that old, but he grew up too quickly. However, Kong Ming Ming said that he had a sage-like demeanor, which made him feel elated all of a sudden. After a while, the other 2 flying spirit beasts that lagged behind also arrived one after another. Dongfang Badeo's group also had someone go up to greet them, but it was not Hu Yunfeng, the pavilion master, but the vice pavilion master of welcoming new pavilion. Chapter 3555. According to the customs of the mysterious pavilion, Feng Song didn't look young, but he had a dignified air about him. Among the 2 deputy pavilion masters, Feng Song was the one who posed the greatest threat to Hu Yunfeng's position as pavilion master. Although his background wasn't as strong as Hu Yunfeng's, the newcomers selected by the mysterious pavilion were basically under his banner. In terms of strength and rallying power, he wasn't weak. He was currently Hu Yunfeng's biggest competitor. As for the remaining deputy pavilion master, although his rank was the same as Feng Song's, his position in the welcoming pavilion had been completely marginalized due to the fact that the Blue Cloud Pavilion's backing wasn't impressive, and he didn't have any outstanding strength, let alone competing for the position of pavilion master. It seemed like he might not even be able to keep his position as deputy pavilion master. Even the newcomers of the Blue Cloud Pavilion would at most call him third pavilion master when they met, which showed how awkward his position was. If it weren't for the fact that the 3 pavilion summit had no choice but to arrange a third pavilion master for the balance of power, the welcoming pavilion would have been Hu Yunfeng and Feng Song's world. Compared to the previous 2 groups of pavilion masters and deputy pavilion masters who personally came out to welcome them, senior brother Ku Bai and Lin Yi, who arrived last, were completely ignored. Not only did they not see any important figures, but even a random disciple of the welcoming pavilion couldn't be bothered with them. Blue Cloud Pavilion was famous for being a waste shelter. They were destined to have no future in this life, so what was there to greet? But what puzzled Lin the most was that even if the pavilion master didn't come, why didn't anyone else from the Blue Cloud Pavilion come to welcome them? Even if there wasn't a big lineup, shouldn't their own people at least come? This made Lin feel that senior brother Ku Bai's words weren't nonsense. This was the worst pavilion, and they weren't a monolithic block. Lin wasn't the only one who was depressed. Even Xiao Ran, who wanted to keep a low profile, was depressed when he saw this scene. After all, those who could come to this heavenly island were all figures who stood at the peak of the secular world. They were dragons and phoenixes among men, favored by the heavens. When had they ever been given the cold shoulder like this? If everyone received the same treatment, then there would be nothing to feel unbalanced about. The problem was that the other side had important people come out to greet them, but they didn't even have a small fry on their side. The difference was too great. This difference in treatment meant that they had already lost at the starting line from the very beginning. It was easy to imagine how their days in the welcoming pavilion would turn out. Senior brother Ku Bai had already expected this scene. Seeing the uncertain expressions on the two's faces, he could only awkwardly comfort them. Although our Blue Cloud Pavilion can't be compared to the other two pavilions, it's not as good as the other two pavilions. Actually, there's also a deputy pavilion master. He wanted to bring some people to welcome you, but he was called away by the pavilion master to deal with some other matters. So, Lin and Xiao Ran looked at each other with a bitter smile. Looking at the grand gestures of the other two pavilions, they knew that the welcoming pavilion still valued the newcomers very much. As for their Blue Cloud Pavilion's deputy pavilion master, he was temporarily assigned to do some chores. He couldn't even come out to greet the newcomers. It could be seen how weak his position was. No wonder even the Clear Cloud Pavilion's internal department wasn't as united as a piece of iron board. If it was any other newcomer who had been given such a cold shoulder, they would definitely have died. If any newcomer had been given such cold treatment, it would be strange if they still listened to their deputy pavilion master. This was a typical example of a bear in a nest. Let's go. There will be a welcoming ceremony in the main hall later. Apart from the few of you who teleported here from the secular world, there will be a welcoming ceremony. Apart from the few of you who were sent here from the secular world, the newcomers who were selected from the main island are already there. I'll take you there. Senior brother Ku Bai sighed. Lin and Xiao Ran nodded. Since things had already come to this point, it was useless to complain in their hearts. After all, they couldn't just switch to Rushing Sky Pavilion or Mysterious Pavilion at the last minute. Not to mention that the two of them weren't that shameless. Even if they did, they wouldn't accept them. Otherwise, they would have been selected long ago. Since they were already here, they could only take things one step at a time. After entering the main entrance of the welcoming pavilion, they passed through a courtyard and arrived at the main hall. Just as senior brother Ku Bai said, there were already a lot of newcomers gathered here. At first glance, there were about 40 to 50 people. They were all selected from the various towns and villages on the island. Every one of them was above the late stage of Heaven Stage. Even those at the peak of the late stage of Heaven Stage could be seen everywhere. The newcomers present had spontaneously divided into 3 small groups. There was a group of about 10 people in the center, each of them dressed in luxurious clothes and had an air of superiority about them. Apart from their own circle, they looked at everyone else with disdain. In the entire main hall, their voices were the loudest, and they had the air of natural superiors. This feeling of déjà vu reminded Lin of the disdainful attitude of the people in the secular world towards the people in the countryside. The two were exactly the same. These newcomers are all chosen by Rushing Sky Pavilion. Each of them has a great background. They are the real second generation of cultivators. You must not provoke these people in the future. You can't afford to. Senior Brother Ku, whispered to Lin, Yi, and Xiao Ran. He was afraid that the two of them didn't know the details and accidentally brought disaster to themselves. Lin, Yi, and Xiao Ran finally understood. No wonder this group of people kept talking about their families, so-and-so elders, and so-and-so stewards. They were actually the second generation of cultivators. Although these people might not be very strong, each of them had a deep background. If they really provoked the big shots behind them, it would indeed not be a small problem. At that moment, Su Lingchong just happened to walk past with Kong Mingming and Zhong Pingliang. Zhong Pingliang winked at Lin Yi, and Lin Yi nodded in understanding. In this kind of situation where the situation was unclear, it was better for Zhong Pingliang to sneak into Rushing Sky Pavilion than to hole up with him in Blue Cloud Pavilion. Apart from other things, he could at least get some useful information that might come in handy in the future. Senior Brother Su, look, that guy with that pretentious face is Lin Yi. Kong Xiaoming took the opportunity to whisper into Su Lingchong's ear. He couldn't wait for Su Lingchong to deal with Lin Yi right now. He wanted Lin Yi to embarrass himself in front of everyone. Let's see how he'd be able to stay in the welcoming pavilion after that. Unfortunately, Su Lingchong didn't go along with his wishes. He was the grandson of Rushing Sky Pavilion's third elder. Dealing with a mere newcomer from the secular world in this kind of situation would not only dirty his hands, but he would also be laughed at by the second generation of the same circle. He wouldn't do something that would lower his status. Chapter 3556. He didn't even bother to look at Lin Yi and walked to the middle. Although the group of second-generation cultivators were arrogant, they respectfully called him Master Su when they saw him. After all, Su Lingchong was not only stronger than them, but also had a stronger background. If they offended him, not only would they be in trouble, but also their family's background would be implicated. They wouldn't do such a stupid thing. These two are from Soaring Pavilion, so they'll be my people in the future. You guys take care of them. Su Lingchong pointed at Kong Xiaoming, and Kong Xiaoming as he greeted the group of second-generation cultivators. Originally, the second-generation cultivators looked down on Kong Mingming and Zhong Pingliang from the secular world from the bottom of their hearts, but for the sake of Su Lingchong, and the fact that these two people were good at talking, they reluctantly accepted them. Since the two of them had latched onto young Master Su's thighs, they could be considered as people with some background. At the same time that Kong Mingming and Zhong Pingliang joined the second-generation cultivators party, also known as Soaring Pavilion on the other side, Dongfang Badeo and Lawless Fist also mixed into the small circle on the left of the second-generation cultivators as they wished. Unlike the arrogant second-generation cultivators, most of the people in this circle were not young. The youngest was a middle-aged man in his 40s or 50s, and their average strength was higher than that of the others present. At least they were masters who had just stepped into the peak of the late stage of Heaven Stage. Although they didn't talk to each other, they all looked scheming, strong, and overbearing, and not easy to mess with. These people are all from Mysterious Pavilion, although they don't have a deep background like the second-generation cultivators. After all, they are older, and their strength is generally much stronger than the masters of the same level. It's better to avoid them in the future. The bitter senior brother continued to advise Lin Yi and Zhong Pingliang, and these guys are the most difficult to deal with, and they often take advantage of their seniority. Although some people are older than them, they broke through Heaven Stage earlier, so they look young. The advantage of these people is that behind them is the Master of Mysterious Pavilion. It is said that the Master of Mysterious Pavilion is one of the most powerful people in the North Island of Heaven Stage. He is very difficult to get along with, and he is very protective. Even the Soaring Sky Pavilion's Pavilion Master was his junior. Therefore, it's best if we don't get involved with these people. You also know that in the secular world there's such a saying as punxi. We also have it here. If these old things don't do well, they'll blame you. When the time comes, if the pavilion master is still willing to stand up for such a small matter, we'll be the ones to suffer. Lin E and the other two could only look at each other speechlessly. The second generation of cultivators couldn't afford to offend them, and neither could the old man. No matter who they met, they had to tuck their tails between their legs and behave. Of the three pavilions, Blue Cloud Pavilion was the weakest. The most depressing thing was that these old fellows actually knew how to blackmail. Is this the cultivation world? Come on, let me introduce you to our Blue Cloud Pavilion's own newcomers. Just like you, they are all grassroots rogue cultivators. However, they are selected from all over the island. The bitter senior apprentice brother led Lin E and the other two to the last remaining small circle. If the first impression that the second generation of cultivators from Soaring Pavilion gave people was that they were ostentatious, and the first impression that the old men from Mysterious Pavilion gave people was that they were powerful, then the first impression that the grassroots rogue cultivators from Blue Cloud Pavilion gave people was that they were a bunch of loose sand. Their average strength was the weakest of the three circles. Generally, they were only at the late stage of Heaven Stage. There weren't many peak late stage Heaven Stage, and those who had reached the Great Perfection Stage were even rarer. They had neither strength nor background. More than a dozen of them just stood there loosely, occasionally conversing with each other in a low voice. They didn't even have the confidence to speak a little louder. It could be seen how weak they were. However, this small circle was divided into several groups. Each of them did their own things. The bitter senior apprentice brother led Lin E and the other two in front of everyone and introduced them. Fellow junior apprentice brothers, these two beside me are newcomers from the secular world, Lin E and Xiao Ran. In the future, they will also be our Blue Cloud Pavilion's preparatory disciples. You can all get to know each other. It was Lin Yi's first time here, and while he was stronger than everyone here, he didn't want to show off. The main reason he came here was to meet the Pill God and Medicine Saint Zhang Liju, not to fight with these people. Therefore, he and Xiao Ran cooperatively greeted the crowd. However, the crowd only glanced at the two of them coldly. They were not even willing to greet them, let alone communicate with them. We're all new here, and we're not familiar with each other yet. We'll get to know each other slowly. The bitter senior apprentice brother's face turned red as he tried to save himself. Even the bitter senior apprentice brother didn't expect these people to be so cold. And the most embarrassing thing was that Lin E and Linny had to laugh at him so quickly. No matter what, he was still an outstanding disciple of the previous generation of the Welcome Pavilion, and he was appointed by Blue Cloud Pavilion to be the manager of the Welcome Pavilion. He was one of the two manager brothers of the Blue Cloud Pavilion here. In the future, he would be in charge of their daily training, missions, and resource allocation. These people really didn't give him any face at all. It's fine, we'll get to know each other in the future. Lin E patted the bitter senior apprentice brother in understanding. He could already tell that this bitter senior apprentice brother was a good person, but he didn't have much prestige, and his personality wasn't strong enough either. Even these newcomers didn't respect him, and it was purely because they saw him as a nice guy that was easy to bully. But what made Lin E confused was that he, Xiao Ran, and the others were all Sky Class Late Phase Peak, and that was why they were able to come here. Why were these people in front of them only at Sky Class Late Phase, and yet they were able to come here? But this wasn't a good question to ask under the current circumstances, and Linny didn't ask. He planned to ask when there was no one else around. But at this time, a person walked out from the crowd of Blue Cloud Pavilion. It was the only Sky Class Late Phase Peak expert in this group. His specific age was unknown, but from his appearance, he didn't seem to be more than 30 years old. He walked in front of Lin E, looked up and down at Lin E, and said with disdain, "Came up from the secular world? To think that in the secular world that country bumpkin place, there are actually people who know how to cultivate. It's really an eye-opener for me. To be able to come to our heaven-class island is already the blessing of 8 generations of ancestors, right? The moment he said that, the other rookies standing by the side roared with laughter. Originally, they were the lowest of the lowest in this place as grassroots itinerant cultivators. They could only be submissive, not daring to speak, but after hearing those words, they immediately realized that they were not the worst. There were people even lower than them. Chapter 3557. For a moment, this group of people actually found a sense of superiority in Lin, Yi, and Xiao Ran. Their indifferent expressions just now were replaced by laughter. Lin Yi was fine. He had long developed the habit of not showing his emotions on his face along the way in the secular world. However, Xiao Ran's expression suddenly changed. This group of people behaved like quails in front of others, not even daring to speak a little louder. Only in front of us, they pretend to be big wolves. Not only are they grassroots, loose cultivators, but they also call us country bumpkins, compared to those arrogant and despotic second-generation cultivators. This group of people, who only know how to bully their own people, are even more hateful. However, Xiao Ren also knew that he could only think about it in his heart. Back then, wasn't his family also ostracized by those ancient sects? This kind of phenomenon happened everywhere, so there was nothing wrong with it. Junior brothers, calm down, calm down. Take a step back, and everything will be fine. Fighting in this welcome pavilion will be severely punished. Senior brother Ku hurriedly tried to persuade them. He was afraid that Lin, Yi, and Xiao Ran would fight out of anger. If that happened, not only would they be severely punished, but even he, the steward senior brother, would also be implicated. Of course, there was one kind of competition that was allowed, and that was a challenge. However, he was also afraid that Lin, Yi, and Xiao Ran would be at a disadvantage, so he couldn't tell them about the challenge. After all, from senior brother Ku's point of view, those from the secular world certainly didn't have a solid foundation in cultivation compared to those from the Heaven Realm North Island. After all, the thinness of the heaven and earth spiritual chi couldn't be compared to mental cultivation methods. Over the years, there were some experts from the secular world who successfully reached the top and entered the upper echelons of the various sects on Middle Island, but they were in the minority. Lin Yi nodded lightly. He had seen too many of these people and was already numb to it. Moreover, with his strength, he could even kill these people in seconds. Even if he faced senior brother Ku, he wouldn't be weak. However, Lin Yi came here for a different purpose, so he didn't need to lower himself to their level. However, one thing could be seen from the behavior of these people. The reason why Blue Cloud Pavilion was the weakest of the 3 pavilions was not because they were grassroots, loose cultivators. A pitiful person would definitely have a hateful side to them, regardless of whether it was strength or background. These people's starting point was already lower than the people from the Soaring Sky Pavilion and Profound Pavilion. Yet they only knew how to bully their own people. It would be a miracle if they could still make Blue Cloud Pavilion stronger. Seeing that Lin Yi had chosen to exercise forbearance, Xiao Ran naturally wouldn't make a move. His strength wasn't as tyrannical as Lin Yi's. Moreover, he'd made up his mind to keep a low profile and cultivate, so he naturally wouldn't act rashly. However, the 2 of them chose to exercise forbearance, but it didn't mean that the other party would let them go. The heaven-ranked Great Perfection stage leader walked in front of the 2 of them and sneered. "What? You look like you're not convinced. You want to spar with me? All right, Meng Tong, am famous for being willing to help others. Then I'll reluctantly practice with you and let you know the difference between Heaven Stage Island and the secular world. Shall we have a duel?" If you're willing, then as you wish. I haven't fought anyone in the secular world for a long time, because no one dares to fight with me. Lin Yi smiled indifferently. He didn't want to cause trouble, but he wasn't afraid of it either. If this person wanted to practice, then so be it. If he didn't get rid of these flies, then who knew how many things would happen in the future? Moreover, to fight someone like him, Lin Yi didn't even need to reveal his true strength. He only needed to suppress his strength to the great perfection of the late stage of Heaven stage. He would be able to torture him to death. Meng Tong, are you causing trouble again? At this time, a low and deep voice suddenly sounded from behind everyone. Lin Yi turned his head to look. The person who came was a man who looked to be in his 30s. The aura on his body was very strong, even stronger than the bitter senior brother, who was in the early stage of foundation establishment. It seemed that he was at least an expert in the early stage of foundation establishment. This person is called Meng Jueguang. Like me, he is a steward of our blue cloud pavilion in the Welcome Pavilion. His strength and ranking are above me. Don't offend him in the future. The bitter senior brother hurriedly introduced him to Lin Yi, and Lin Yi in a low voice. Another person who couldn't be offended. Lin Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He had only been in the Welcome Pavilion for a short while, but he had already heard this sentence from the bitter senior brother no less than 3 times. It seemed that in the entire Welcome Pavilion, whether it was inside or outside of Blue Cloud Pavilion, there was no one who could be offended. They were all great gods that couldn't be provoked. Similarly, this senior brother Meng Jueguang was a steward of the Blue Cloud Pavilion. His entrance was much more impressive than that of the bitter senior brother. Everywhere he went, the disciples of Blue Cloud Pavilion hurriedly greeted him respectfully. In contrast, on the side of the bitter senior brother, other than Lin Yi and Xiao Ran, who were still respectful to him, no one else gave him any face. Seeing Meng Jueguang appear, Meng Tong, who was acting all high and mighty just a moment ago, immediately bowed and bowed as he walked up to greet Meng Jueguang. Flattering him, how could that be? I'm here to introduce the situation to the 2 junior brothers from the secular world, lest we embarrass our clear cloud pavilion in the future. Am I right? 2 junior brothers from the secular world? Meng Jueguang looked at Lin Yi, and Xiao Ran meaningfully and said, "It's not up to a newcomer like you to meddle. Bitter junior brother, since these 2 junior brothers from the secular world were painstakingly brought here by you, you will also be responsible for teaching them in the future. This will prevent them from bringing in the bad habits of the secular world and spoiling the reputation of our Blue Cloud Pavilion." Bitter senior brother was just a nickname. Bitter senior brother wasn't really bitter, but Meng Jueguang was the senior brother steward of Blue Cloud Pavilion here. For him to call bitter senior brother by this nickname was a little disrespectful, no matter how you looked at it. Yes, senior brother Meng. On the contrary, the bitter senior brother didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it. He simply smiled and nodded. Lin Yi also smiled faintly. However, Xiao Ran clearly wasn't that scheming. Even his breathing was a little hurried. Although this Meng Jueguang's words were dignified, the disdain in his words was simply the same as Meng Tong's. Moreover, his words were clearly announcing to everyone that the 2 of them were trash that he looked down on. That was why they were thrown to the bitter senior brother. In this way, wouldn't Meng Tong and the others become even more unscrupulous in the future? Meng Jueguang only glanced at Lin Yi and Xiao Ran before turning his head to look at Meng Tong and said, "Meng Tong, don't think that I will be biased towards you no matter what just because we came from the same village. Let me tell you, not only will I not be biased towards you, I will be especially strict with you in the future. Do you hear me?" As soon as these words came out, everyone's expression changed again. Chapter 35:58. Moreover, the 2 of them came from the same village. Needless to say, their relationship was much closer than everyone else's. How was this a warning to Meng Tong? He was clearly announcing that Meng Tong was on his side. He was supporting Meng Tong. I know. Don't worry, ninth cousin, I definitely won't embarrass you. Meng Tong chuckled, a proud expression overflowing from his face. As for the way he addressed Meng Jueguang, he also used the way they addressed their relatives in the village. He was also showing off to everyone. He was originally a rare, heaven-stage great perfection expert in this group. Now that he had a backer like Meng Jueguang, needless to say, he would become the big brother of the newcomers in the future. The situation was stronger than the person. Originally, the Clear Cloud Pavilion's new disciples were all acting on their own, but after Meng Jueguang's words, the two small groups that had separated earlier, although not all of them could be said to have formed, most of the new disciples immediately gathered around Meng Tong's side. In order to live a more comfortable life in the future, they naturally had to choose a side at this time. Otherwise, if someone were to make things difficult for them, their days would be miserable. Of course, in this kind of situation, the relationship established was not reliable at all. These people were all fence-sitters going to Meng Tong's side just to get some benefits. No wonder this Clear Cloud Pavilion was in such a mess, and the atmosphere was so bad. In this way, Lin Yi and Meng Tong were completely excluded from the newcomer group, standing together with senior brother Bitter. They became completely isolated. Brother Lin, it seems that our situation isn't very good. Xiao Ran smiled bitterly. Humans were social creatures. No matter where they were, being excluded from the group usually wouldn't end well, especially now that they had just arrived, and their strength wasn't very outstanding. Lin Yi shook his head indifferently. Don't worry. Don't we still have senior brother Bitter? We won't suffer too much. In the secular world, Lin Yi had always been a rogue cultivator. Even if he eventually stood at the peak of the cultivation world, he still relied on strength, not a backer. Otherwise, if Lin Yi knew his own background earlier, he could just say, Lin Dongfang is my grandfather, and Yang Ming is my master. Wouldn't I be invincible? Comparing backing was a sign of weakening one's own strength. Hey, junior brother Lin Yi, don't expect too much from me. Although I'm one of the two managers, the power lies with senior brother Meng. Our Blue Cloud Pavilion trusts him more, so there are many things that I can't say much about. Senior brother Wu shook his head with a bitter smile. He actually had a backer. He was an elder of Blue Cloud Pavilion. However, his backer went to East Island to complete a task, and there was no news of him after that. So, he was in trouble. However, in order to not let Lin Yi and Xiao Ran worry too much, he still comforted them. But don't worry, junior brothers, it's within my authority. If it's within my power, I'll definitely help. Xiao Ran smiled sheepishly. Even senior brother Wu didn't have much confidence in himself. It seemed like the days ahead were going to be tough. On the other hand, Lin Yi didn't mind it too much. He had the Jade Space as a trump card, so he didn't have to worry about training. His next task was to familiarize himself with the environment and find out more about Elixir God Zhang Liju. After that, he could plan his next step. As they were talking, they saw the head of the welcoming pavilion, Hu Yunfeng, and the vice head of the welcoming pavilion, Feng Song. They walked up to the stage in the middle of the hall, instantly attracting the attention of all the newcomers. This was obviously the welcoming ceremony that senior brother Wu Qiu had mentioned. Logically speaking, this was the perfect opportunity to establish their prestige in front of all the newcomers, and the head of the welcoming pavilion and the vice head of the welcoming pavilion should show up together. But this third head of the Blue Cloud Pavilion was still busy with his so-called chores, and he didn't even have the chance to show his face. It was quite pitiful. Hu Yunfeng looked around. Wherever her gaze landed, the hubbub immediately quieted down. Even the group of second-generation cultivators in the middle was no exception. This wasn't because they wanted to give him face, but because they were completely subdued by Hu Yunfeng's aura. When one's strength reached a high enough level, one's actions would be able to subdue people. And this Hu Yunfeng was the head of the welcoming pavilion. Evidently, His reputation wasn't just for show. Newcomers, no matter where you come from, no matter what your background is, since you've come to our welcoming pavilion from today onwards, you are all outer sect preparatory disciples. Everyone will be treated the same. For the next year, the welcoming pavilion will provide you with training resources that you couldn't even imagine in the past. There is only one rule for the distribution of these resources, and that is that only the strong will get it. A ranking competition will be held regularly, and the higher your ranking, the more training resources you will receive, and the lower your ranking will be. Everything will be fought for with your own strength. Blaming others is the behavior of the weak. Within a year, if you can successfully build your foundation, then congratulations, you will be able to enter the 3 great pavilions that everyone dreams of. You will receive better training resources, and your strength and cultivation will improve. However, if you still haven't built your foundation in a year, then I'm sorry, but the welcoming pavilion doesn't raise idlers, and it definitely won't raise trash. You will be sent to the toughest place on the island to do hard labor, and you will no longer be given any training resources. If you can't break through, you can only spend the rest of your life in poverty, and don't even think about taking another step forward. The above is the most important rule of the welcoming pavilion. Does anyone have any questions? Hu Yunfeng looked at the crowd below the stage and asked in a clear voice, "May I ask, head of the pavilion, when will the first ranking competition be held? Today?" Someone below the stage asked. Hu Yunfeng stroked his white beard and smiled. "Of course not. The first ranking competition will be held next month today." If that's the case, then how will this month's training resources be distributed? Will everyone be treated equally? I'm afraid it will be very difficult to make it truly fair. The person continued to ask. Everyone immediately pricked up their ears. This question was very reasonable. After all, not all resources could be taken out and distributed equally like pills. Many natural resources like cultivation caves could not be distributed fairly, and they couldn't let everyone exchange cultivation caves every day. Not to mention cultivation, it would be very tiring. Chapter 3559. As soon as he said that, the entire place was in an uproar. The group of second-generation cultivators from Soaring Pavilion was naturally proud of themselves. As for the newcomers from the other 2 pavilions, they did not look so good, especially those from Blue Cloud Pavilion. Every one of them had a bitter look on their faces. He's already showing favoritism to the second-generation cultivators from the very beginning. How can he say that he treats everyone equally? The grassroots rogue cultivators below the stage immediately became agitated. If the rules of Welcoming Pavilion had always been to show favoritism to the second-generation cultivators, it would have been fine. Although everyone was dissatisfied, they could only accept it. However, Hu Yunfeng had put on a fair and just attitude. He had clearly given these grassroots rogue cultivators hope, but the reality was so cruel. No wonder they were so agitated. Hu Yunfeng's expression changed slightly when he heard the voice, but he quickly regained his composure. He looked at the crowd and said indifferently, "All of you came from the secular cultivation world or the cultivation tribes on the island. What do you think is fair in the cultivation world? Soaring Pavilion and Mysterious Pavilion are stronger than Blue Cloud Pavilion. This arrangement is based on overall strength. If you think you are capable, enter Blue Cloud Pavilion in the future and turn Blue Cloud Pavilion into the #1 pavilion on the Northern Island. I'm afraid the best cave abode will be Blue Cloud Pavilion. Right? So, what is favoritism? I'm doing this for the sake of fairness and justice. I have no selfish motives. Even if I arrange the best cave abode for you, I won't gain anything from it. Right?" Although his words were dignified, they were telling everyone the truth. People were stronger than people. However, although the people from Blue Cloud Pavilion felt uncomfortable when they heard that, there was nothing they could do. With just a few words, Hu Yunfeng had already put the cruelty of cultivation in front of everyone. especially for the weak grassroots rogue cultivators from Blue Cloud Pavilion. To sum it up, it could be summed up in 8 words. If there is a way, you want to go, but if there is no way, you will die. Fairness? When had there ever been true fairness in the world? The strong were respected. This was the most essential truth of the world. It was the same everywhere. After Hu Yunfeng's speech, the welcoming ceremony was considered to have ended hastily. For all the newcomers, what happened next was what they were most concerned about. A cave dwelling. According to Pavilion Master Hu Yunfeng, the best cultivation abodes were reserved for the second-generation cultivators of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, the slightly inferior ones for the old men of the Mysterious Pavilion, and the worst ones for the new grassroots cultivators of the Blue Cloud Pavilion. The general trend was already like this. It was impossible to change it by relying on the strength of the newcomers. For the grassroots rookies of Blue Cloud Pavilion, the most realistic thing right now was how to choose the better cave abodes among the worst. After all, there was still a need to pick the tallest among the dwarves. Even in the worst batch of cultivation caves, there were still good and bad ones among them. He couldn't afford to offend the second-generation cultivator of Soaring Sky Pavilion, nor could he afford to offend the old man of Mysterious Pavilion. As for the rest of the people from Blue Cloud Pavilion, they were all grassroots rogue cultivators with no foundation, so they could at least compete with each other. Under the lead of Meng Jueguang and senior brother Ku Bai, everyone walked toward the cultivation abodes of Blue Cloud Pavilion. It was not too far from the welcoming pavilion, just in the mountains behind it. Brother Lin, the spiritual energy on this mountain is very rich. In comparison, the spiritual energy in the secular world is so thin that it can be ignored. The difference is more than 100 times. No wonder everyone dreams of coming to this heavenly island, Xiao Ran said to Lin Yi with emotion. Lin Yi could not help but nod. The two of them came from the secular world, so they felt this especially deeply. They did not feel it when they were in the welcoming pavilion, but now that they stepped into the mountain, they immediately felt the spiritual energy in the air. This was simply unimaginable in the secular world. However, Lin Yi had the space in the jade pendant, so his requirement for the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was not particularly high. At this time, he pretended to be surprised. Hey, you really are a country bumpkin who has never seen the world, making a fuss about such a little spiritual energy. You are really a disgrace to our Blue Cloud Pavilion. Meng Tong, who was walking in front, turned his head and ridiculed. The others on the side also echoed and laughed. They were originally thinking about the matter of the cave residences. They were still quite nervous, but when they looked at Lin Yi and Xiao Ran, the two country bumpkins from the secular world, they immediately found their confidence. Needless to say, the two worst cultivation abodes belonged to these two. Being ridiculed and ridiculed so unscrupulously, Xiao Ran's face suddenly turned red. However, Lin Yi did not react to this, and only faintly smiled. This group of people were nothing more than clowns with a twisted mentality. They were suppressed by the Soaring Sky Pavilion and the Mysterious Pavilion, so they ran in front of him to find a sense of existence. There was no need to take it to heart. Seeing this, the bitter senior apprentice brother could only smile bitterly and help the two out. Junior apprentice brothers, you may not know this, but the mountain we are standing on is not an ordinary mountain. It is a spiritual mountain. There is a huge spiritual jade mine buried under it. So spiritual energy will come out from the ground and dissipate into the air. It is much richer than other places on the island. Spiritual jade mine? Could it be that this spiritual jade mine contains spiritual energy of heaven and earth? Lin Yi could not help but be moved. This reminded him of the Zhenqi energy stone in the secular world. That's right. You can mine spiritual jades from the spiritual jade mine, and the spiritual jades contain very rich spiritual energy. It's an excellent item to assist in cultivation. According to the rules, the Welcome Pavilion will give you a piece of spiritual jade every month. You'll know when you use it, explained the bitter senior brother. A piece of spiritual jade will be given every month? This treatment sounded good, but he did not know the specific effect. Compared to his own space in the jade pendant, he did not know which was better. However, from what Linny felt, even if this spiritual jade was stronger than the energy stones, it was not as rich as the space in the jade pendant. However, Lin Yi was more eager to know at the moment. Although spiritual jades sounded higher than the energy stones in the secular world, they also contained spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Since his space in the jade pendant could recharge the energy stones in the secular world, then did it also have the same effect on spiritual jades? For example, if other people used spiritual jades, could he also use them to recharge? If spiritual jades were really better than the space in the jade pendant, and he could recharge them, then it would be a great tool for cultivation. This question was related to his future cultivation plan. When the spiritual jades were in his hands, he had to test it as soon as possible. Senior Brother Ku, are these cultivation caves also related to the spirit jade mine? Xiao Ran, who was at the side, suddenly asked, "That's right. The cultivation cave abode is located on top of this spirit jade mine. Although the density of the spiritual energy varies greatly depending on the location. Even the worst one is at least 10 times denser than the one outside. As for the better ones, the density is 100 or even 1,000 times denser." You're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.